Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most highly built up and anticipated, and by that I mean 1 week announced before this episode of the Young Sports Agents of Chaos podcast yet. Because, 1 week in advance is kind of how we do things around here. But it is our 3-round mock NFL draft. We are highly excited. This was literally an idea that we had thought of kind of since the beginning when we first started doing this, just off of a whim. And as is everything when it comes to our little group, all our ideas come off on a whim. And I think, just per usual, we're going to execute this flawlessly, unlike my English for the beginning part of this soliloquy. As always, I'm one of your triumvirate of co-hosts here, Jurgen. As always, Iceman, as it says there. I actually forgot to edit that, but we're going to keep it there. Iceman Jurg here to help bring you this mock draft. And of course, as always, joining me, first, the gentleman to my side, at least that's how it's configured on my screen. He has the beautiful backwards white snapback on. He's got a beautiful white shirt, beautiful white hat. Wearing all white. I missed the memo, apparently. Justin, we missed the memo, but it is, of course, Podfather Rick. Rick, how you doing? We missed you last week.
This is my Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 25 impersonation right here, basically, just the all white going on there. Yeah, no, it was I was unfortunate that I had to miss last week. Obviously with everything going on in my life, I had to kind of maneuver some things around. But happy to join you this week for a nice little mock draft. If McShay, Kuiper, and Bucky Brooks can do it, then why the hell can't I? Basically, that's all I got to say. So that's why I'm here.
And I'm saying this, we're going to challenge them. I think this is going to be a damn good mock draft, if you ask me. And of course, completing our trio as always. Our guy, he kind of pushed the idea. He brought up the mock like before anything else really when it came to it. So as per usual, he is of course the genius brain that comes up with trivia on a weekly basis. We're gonna have to take a break from the trivia this week, and of course, sadly, no review because we got a lot of picks to get to. But this is a man who loves football, just as the two of us. He knows how to break it down, and he's done a couple mock drafts now since. So he's starting to get notches on his belt. This is experience for him, and it's all going to show out here. He's going to show how much of a 5-tool player he is. Justin, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Jurg. Rick, it's great to have you back. I'm ready to talk some football, man. I'm excited.
As am I. And as, like we said last week, we're going to do a full 3-round mock. It kind of worked out for us. Math worked in our favor this time, boys. There are 105 picks exactly in the first 3 rounds of this year's NFL draft. How fortuitous there being 3 of us. It'd also be good if there were 5 of us, but not if there were 4 of us, so tragic. But there are 3 of us, 105 picks. We got a lot of selections to make. The way we divided this, unlike other mock drafts, we're not going to separate it, going pick by pick. So 1 me, 2 Rick, 3 Justin, then 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. No, we divided up the teams among us in a way where all of us get 35 picks total in this draft. We are going to be changing the complexion of franchises in the future and beyond, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what I'm excited about. Of course, it's going to be a lot. We may struggle to remember the order sometimes, but don't you worry, because if we ever need to remind ourselves where we are, we have this beautiful chart created. Well, look at that in all of its color-coordinated glory. Those colors were picked at random and at the last second. As you can see,
Microsoft is not a sponsor, by the way.
they are not. They are not. And I don't think they'd be happy with how that looks yet.
No, it could be better, but
okay. It could be better. But like everything, makeshift, gotta come up and fly. And I gotta say, don't look at that. But as you guys kind of get the idea right there, Justin is starting us off with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I get the Detroit Lions. Rick continues, and we're gonna kind of go from there. A quick summary of the organizations that we are all in charge of here really quick, so that you all know who to, essentially scream at when the incorrect picks end up getting made for this draft. In short, the teams that I have are the Dallas Cowboys, the Cincinnati Bengals, Detroit Lions, Indianapolis Colts, Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, the Tennessee Titans, the Atlanta Falcons, and the New York Giants via trade. Justin has the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Washington Commanders, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or Tampa Bay Gronkaneers, the Green Bay Packers, or the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Carolina Panthers, the Seattle Seahawks, the Denver Broncos, the New Orleans Saints, and the Kansas City Chiefs. And finally, Podfather Rick himself has the Chicago Bears, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Cleveland Browns, the New England Patriots, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Minnesota Vikings, the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans, painted in a different way, the Los Angeles Rams, and the New York Jets via trade. Rick was the lucky recipient of the Jets picks in this mock.
And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. So actually, there's two of them. Number one, initially I had the Giants as my picks, but God forbid that I make a bad pick and I have to hear from my father-in-law who's a Giants fan, or my wife who's a Giants fan too. Not good in that way. But I picked the Jets because of what you two did to me last week. What you two did is inexcusable. Highly inexcusable. What? Okay. I will run through this very quickly. Since 2000, I have made a chart of every New York Jets first-round draft pick on a good, terrible, or indifferent. And in the terrible, Alabama has like the most, or Southern California has the most, and Ohio State's there too. So anytime someone is rumored to go to the Jets from Alabama or Ohio State or USC, I get very frustrated. And what does Jurgen do last week? He picks with number 10, Jameson Williams from Alabama. What? And I was driving home, and I having to turn that podcast on and watch you make that pick, and I almost swerved off the Bell Parkway. I was like, why did you do that? It's okay. But I have the Jets now to rectify the wrongs of Jurg and Justin, who is his complicit, partner, compadre. And I'm going to throw to a different podcast later on. I don't know who it was that made the pick, but you two were in there with Drake London out of Southern California at number 10. You two. I thought you two, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, I thought you two loved me. I thought you guys were my friends. And this is what you do to me? You make me crazy like this? No. We're going to change the game, and we are not going to have that today. I have the Jets. I will right the wrongs, and that's the way it's going to go. So.
Rick, if you just lay down the gauntlet, if you screw up these picks, you're going to hear about it now.
All right.
You gotta make sure these picks are right in a week.
That is absolutely fine with me. I don't mind that at all. They will be right in a week. They'll be right in 2 weeks. They'll be right in 10 years. That's how right they will be, because that's how confident I am in my selections.
Well,
all right, GM Podfather Rick.
First off, beautiful. First off, absolutely beautiful. I can't say it any better. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to waste any more time because we've got a lot of picks to make. We are going to get things going right and quick. Justin, of course, you have the first overall selection with the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock.
Yes,
please don't take 5 minutes.
No, a 4.5 at most. So everyone has seen, I've put out a few things now. I like to get a little spicy with my Jaguars pick. But for the sake of time and effort, what I think they're going to do, they're going to go with that default number 1 guy, Aiden Hutchinson. He's the lowest, the highest floor of anyone in the draft. His bottom is, still, I believe, possibly a Pro Bowl caliber player. And it does not hurt to have someone who can really rush the passer on the side of Josh Allen there. Keeping Trevor Lawrence on the field will be a major thing. So they want to get teams off quickly, and the way you do that is sacks and turnovers. So they're going to address that with the number 1 overall pick, in my opinion. Whether or not they should is another story, but it's not a bad pick.
Oh, no, not at all. I think everyone agrees for the most part. Rick, we didn't get your analysis. I kind of said everything I wanted about Aiden Hutchinson. Do you think it's almost consensus that he's the safest pick of this draft?
I think so. I mean, he's an absolute freak of a player, and he's a guy who will work hard in the locker room, in the workout room, all offseason long to get to that point. I think it's a very safe pick. It may not be flashy. It may not be the freak athlete that like an Evan Neal is or a Sauce Gardner is, but he's a guy that will have a very good long career on that edge, and maybe move him back to a linebacker when the time comes. He could be like a Brian Urlacher mold even, move him back to a linebacker mold potentially in the later years. He's a very, very good player, and I would not be surprised to see him go number 1. I know Detroit wouldn't be very happy if he goes number 1, but I would not be surprised to see him go that high.
Yeah, and speaking of Detroit, of course, they have the 2nd overall pick assigned to by moi. Second time I've had Detroit in a mock over the last week or so. So the Lions, it's very interesting. They really need a lot of different positions. A couple teams are like that, including the team right under them. It says every position for the Texans. That'll be a fun one, to say the least. I'm not going to waste any time, though. I think for Detroit, it's obvious you need to get a guy along the defensive line to really make an impact. And I just can't see, even though there was like a report a week or two ago that maybe Dan Campbell wasn't completely sold on Kayvon Thibodeau, I don't see any reason how you don't draft him. So I'm going to go with Kayvon Thibodeau with the 2nd overall pick here. He could end up being that cornerstone that you need along the defensive line. You got to take him if he could become a franchise pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, I've also seen a lot of reports about Trayvon Walker going up that high too in the first couple of picks from Georgia, but I don't believe the hype. I think Thibodeau is a very strong player. He was a guy that was highly regarded coming out of high school, went to a very good team in Oregon and really showed out. And it's just absolute need. I know it's a lot of opportunity for the Lions to go number 2 with a quarterback, but I just don't see it happening. I think it's not a smart idea at all. And I think Thibodeau adds another layer to that defense, and Detroit's defense needs another layer, another change of mindset. So I think that's a very, very good pick right over there, I think.
Any comments, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, he's my highest ceiling in the draft. I think that if anyone could be like that true Hall of Famer pass rusher in this one, I think it's Thibodeau, albeit by a small margin over Hutchinson. But yeah, it's in my mind the right pick. Quarterback is not in this draft. There's no quarterback I think that's safe enough to pick it to, and start building from the trenches as I've been preaching every episode for the past few weeks. And when they're unfortunately probably bad again next year, they'll have that opportunity to take a quarterback.
Yeah. And speaking of being bad again next year and having to have a culture change, that comes up with this next team here. Since you have these picks back to back, Rick, we're going to save the discussion for both of them for after. So start with the Texans, then go to your Jets. Who are you going to pick here first, beginning with good old boys in Texas, Houston?
So I've kind of batted this one back and forth a little bit because the Texans do need everybody. They need every single person. But one thing that I think that they need to really have is a guy who's going to change the culture and really be a strong athlete over there. And I think if you go back to the Texans' history when they had their expansion draft, they picked Tony Baselli at number 1. Mm-hmm. And he if he hadn't gotten hurt, would have been a real culture changer for that locker room. So for me, number 3, it's Evan Neal out of Alabama. He's a guy who's a lanky, rangy. He's a mammoth offensive lineman at 6'7", 345. I think he's a really strong player, and it's going to be good for the Texans to have him blocking for Davis Mills, get him kind of set for a year, because we know the Texans are going to be bad next year, so it's going to be a question of do they have C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young as quarterback over there. So I think that's something that I think is really significant for them to really have at number 3, which leads me to number 4.
Rick, I gotta stop for a second. The whole tirade. Rick's first pick is an Alabama player.
But it's not to the Jets. That's the thing.
Exactly.
First pick after that whole thing. You went right to Alabama.
Because it's not for the Jets. It's not for the Jets. It's for the Texans. Because anybody who's from Alabama or USC or Ohio State, not picked by the Jets, does well. It's that simple.
It's not wrong.
It's that simple.
I want to argue, but I can't.
It's that simple. Yeah, exactly. So, so with that regard, that in mind, and I mean, look, Evan Neal being the first tackle off the board makes sense. I know there's a lot of talk about Ekwonu and Cross, but Evan Neal's just the best athlete of the 3 of them. So I think him going over there makes sense for Houston to go. Number 4 is really a tough one. Not because I'm a Jets fan, but because there's a lot of different ways I can look at it and say to myself, do I really feel comfortable going this high with a player of this position? There's a lot of talk about Sauce Gardner. A lot of talk about him going up at number 4. The question is it all hype? I mean, I would love to have another offensive lineman go at number 4, but I'm going to stick my neck out here, and I'm going to say the Jets are going Sauce Gardner, number 4, the corner. The Jets need to have a good corner to pair up with their secondary. They need to rebuild that secondary a little bit. And I think that Gardner is going to be a guy who can do that. Is it high? Sure. But with a player of that caliber, I think it's the right move. And for a guy that never had a touchdown against them in college, sure, he's going to have one against them in the preseason. That'll get him under the feet saying, hey, listen, this isn't the American anymore. You're not playing Tulsa every week. You're playing the NFL. So you got to have strong players out there against you. I think it's a very strong pick, and I think it's one that is safe, but there's a risk in that it's a corner being that high, but I like it for the Jets.
Hey, I mean, if you could get a guy that could potentially shut down half the field, like I think that's a risk worth taking. And really the last corner I can think of that was taken this high in any way was Jalen Ramsey, and I think he's more than paid off for his 2 stints. Even though things ended terribly in Jacksonville, that defense, when they made it to the AFC Championship game, half the field was shut down by Jalen Ramsey. People need to remember nowadays the interceptions are not the number when it comes to quarterbacks. It's how many big plays are they allowing? What's the completion percentage of these QBs when it comes to it? It's not interception anymore, and Jalen Ramsey does that. If Gardner can be even like 80% of what Jalen Ramsey is, That's pretty good for a
Yeah.
number 4 overall pick.
Absolutely.
Justin, any comment? Or I assume Justin, I think you for the most part would be happy. Like I think a lot of Jets fans that I know personally would be like ecstatic if Sauce Gardner was the pick.
Well, that's what I said. I when we did our mocks last week, Jurg, I had Sauce at 4, I believe, and like I said, I think that if there's none of these guys at 4, it's possible they trade down. There's a lot of teams that I think will be looking to trade up for a quarterback if the right deal comes along and the edge defenders aren't there. I could see them moving back and seeing if they could pick up Sauce at a later pick. But I have no issues with it. Like I said, if you really think he's that next Darrelle Revis for the New York Jets type of guy, it does wonders for your defense because you could just put him on one side, leave him on his island, and like you said, Jerk, just shut down half that side of the field, and then you got 10 guys to do whatever you want. It makes running a defense a whole lot easier. I know Salah says that everyone says Salah likes his edge defenders, but if they're not there, you still need to cover.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that you really have to at this point kind of know what your need is and know what the values are in a pick. I mean, at once, if Thibodeau and Hutchinson are off the board, the next edge is George Karlaftis, and he's not a top 5 pick. I'm sorry to say, but he's just not a top 5 talented player. So if you want to reach for that, then you have to really be sold on the fact that he's going to be an impact player. And Gardner, he may not be an impact player in year 1, but as long as he's consistent enough to keep that defense level, if not better than where they were last year, and trust me, it's a very low bar to clear. So once you can get that, I think you're in good shape.
Absolutely. And Rick, you mentioned in those back-to-back picks, you brought up the idea of offensive line. We bring up to the other New York team here that definitely has been targeting offensive line. A lot of people are predicting the Giants are going to go with an offensive lineman with one of these 2 draft picks. And I got to say, that's just straight up where I'm going to go. I'm not going to waste any time here. I think with Andrew Thomas on that offensive line, they believe they have their left tackle now. Just add a guy who could potentially play right tackle. And there's a guy on this board. I mean, technically both tackles that are on the board right now have done both. But I think the Giants are going to fall in love with old buddy from North Carolina State, Ikem Ekwono. To me, it just makes the most sense. He is so supremely talented. He's so physically gifted. He's just an absolute mauler. He can help pass block, but I think the big thing is the run blocking. And if Saquon Barkley wants to try to have a big year this year, and I think they kind of understand the way the offense is as presently constructed, that Barkley needs to play a big role here. They need him to do that. They need a guy who, yes, can help pass block, but also can help run block. And Icky is going to be my selection here with the Giants' 5th overall pick. I also have their 7th pick, but before I get to that, we got to pick in between. It is the Carolina Panthers. And we're now slowly heading into a territory where quarterback could be feasible with a handful of these selections. Will it be here? Who knows? I think let's just get into it straight away before we go any further. Justin, you got the Carolina Panthers pick here, bud. Let us know. What do you think? What's going to happen here? I think, to not overstate it, I think this pick is where the draft starts.
Absolutely. This is where things get a little spicy, as I would say. This is the pick that I really struggled with when I was going over these things when we got our teams. What do I think the right pick is, and what do I think they might do? Matt Rule's in the hot seat, and he needs a quarterback there. This is the spot. I mean, clearly no other teams above him are going to take a quarterback yet. I mean, it's possible that the Giants, the Texans, and Detroit are in the quarterback market, but they're not striking anyone as quarterback teams at this point. And they all have young coaches that are going to get, another chance next year. Matt Rule might not have that chance. Is that quarterback in this draft? And if he is, do you take him here? In my mind, what's best for the team would be taking a tackle. I know that they did some revamped offensive line. Charles Cross is sitting there, and the quarterback draft next year is a lot stronger. I am very tempted to take Charles Cross, but what I think they're going to do is I think they're either going to take Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis. I think Matt Rule is going to be a Willis guy who I'm going to take with this 6th pick. He's got that, excessive arm talent. He's not necessarily the guy that's ready today. He's a bit of a project, which is why a lot of people think Kenny Pickett's going to be that pick, because Kenny Pickett seems to be the most pro-ready quarterback in this draft. But there's just something intangible that Malik Willis has, that arm talent, his throws down the field. He's got potential to be an excellent player for a long time. And if Matt Rule wants to keep his job and they don't want those changes in Carolina, that's the direction they're going to have to go.
Wow.
It's a really interesting proposition there because as somebody who currently attends Liberty University, I've had the chance to kind of watch Malik Willis, from afar, and Malik Willis is incredibly talented. He is a lighted up type of player when he's on, and him and Christian McCaffrey in the same offense would be gold for Carolina. But that's the big question mark: is can you trust that Willis will sit behind Sam Darnold for 1 year? And is Darnold the type of guy to kind of foster that growth? It's a risk.
I don't necessarily think that's. I don't think that's the thing. I don't think that anyone's can. Maybe he'll sit behind Sam Darnold for 4 or 5 games, but Sam Darnold starts out last year like he did with 1 touchdown a game and a few picks after game 3 because he was great the first 3 games, but his numbers were bloated. He was inflated. He had Christian McCaffrey there. The offensive line was playing well, and he had a bunch of rushing touchdowns that he's not going to have every year. As you saw, his numbers just fell apart at the end of the year. 3-4 games into the season, when the team has already seen him in that Carolina offensive system, they're going to try and pick him apart. And if he can't get his feet under him, Malik Willis will be playing very early. So it's going to be, it's a pick now pick. This is not a bridge pick, which is why I was very if I thought Matt Rule had another year, tackle 10 out of 10 times he's going to take Charles Cross in this position right now.
But that leads to
that year.
That leads to the question, though, is that if he doesn't have that year, then this pick is basically for naught because you got a new coach in there who's going to want a new quarterback and a new system. Willis's pick might be for nothing.
If Malik Willis plays well, that'll account for a few games and they're in playoff contention. Because let's face it, Sam Darnold did not play well down the stretch. He had an incomplete fracture at the end of the season. If Malik Willis can stay healthy and has a better passer rating and more touchdowns than Darnold did, they're in a lot more games. They were in a lot of the games that they lost last year. Their strength of schedule was tough, but they were in a lot of those games. And
Sam Darnold went to what school? And Sam Darnold went to what school?
I'm not picking Sam Darnold. I'm picking
but I'm saying he went to what school?
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Just for the fans at home, Southern California. And who picked Sam Darnold?
It was USD.
And who picked Sam Darnold in the draft?
The Jets.
Thank you. I rest my case.
Moving on.
Not the Carolina Panthers.
We're gonna move on here to the. I have back-to-back picks here. I will go relatively fast so we can keep it going. The 8th pick now is where it gets interesting. Let me go with number 7 here. I think the Giants are going to attack the trenches like we've talked about. I think they're going to go after offensive line with the first pick most likely because I don't think they want to risk, even though Charles Cross and Icahn, one of them is probably going to be there at 7. I think they just want to take the guy at 5, which means at 7 it gives them space for defense. If somehow, some way Gardner fell to 7, I think they would go with it, but he did not. So I'm going to go with the next best thing, which is pass rush. And while I agree with you guys, I think George Karlaftis, I think some people are overlooking him. I think he's supremely talented. I think we know who they're going to go with, the guy who's been just a sensation over the last month and a half going up mocks. I'm going to go with Travon Walker out of Georgia for the Giants D-line. And now the Falcons. This is where it gets really interesting because I think the Falcons also are in need of that every position need right there because they need a lot. Except, funny enough, it mentions guard and center. I don't think the guard position is necessarily bad. Center, they do kind of need because Alex Mack is getting up there. They're still a really good player. That being said, this idea was said to me earlier this week. And I got to say, I started marinating it. And I started thinking, and I'm like, you know what? What they said makes sense. Arthur Smith, young mind, offensive guy. Who does he for sure want no matter what? He wants his quarterback. And in terms of a system and the idea of who could work there, it was told to me, it was put in my brain that Kenny Pickett would be a really good fit in the Falcons system, what they could run. And while I personally am not completely sold on this pick, this is kind of more where I dive into what I think will happen more than what I think should happen. And I think Kenny Pickett at number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons is a realistic possibility. And that is where I'm going to go with this pick. And I'm picking Pickett to the Falcons at 8th overall because the idea was said to me, and it makes sense. Because if you think the way that Arthur Smith is going to want to run things, Pickett is by far the selection that makes the most sense. Think of what he could do there. There are concerns, of course. I didn't want to pick him, but just the idea was put into my brain. And the more I thought, you know what? I think the Falcons are more than willing to do this. Now, again, just to reiterate, we're not doing trades here because this would completely muck up everything we're doing. And it already took a lot of work to get us all to 35 picks. Let me just say that. So because of that, in real life, maybe could the Falcons consider a trade down here? Maybe try to accumulate a couple more picks. I think so. But I think Atlanta with Pickett here at number 8 is where I see them going.
I think the team that's picking next, if Willis and Pickett go off the board, Seattle's going down. Seattle's moving down because they wanted the quarterback too. And if they're not going to take a quarterback at 9, they're going to fall back into the later first round, I think, because that to me, they want a quarterback desperately, and it's not going to be Baker Mayfield. We know that for a fact, but they need somebody too. So I to be honest,
want to be Baker Mayfield.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if it's not going to be Baker Mayfield, if they don't get him,
yeah.
Jurgen, I was scared for a second. I thought you were going to go for a center at number 8, and I was getting really scared. I was going to drive to Bristol and be like, Jurgen, you okay, buddy?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Seattle here. Let's not waste any more time. The next pick belongs to Justin. Seattle, you got them at number 9, Justin. I feel like I know where you're going to go with this, but I will let you make the selection official here.
Am I that transparent, Jurgen?
Well, we have our first ever.
Just because I bring up Max Unger in every podcast that we have.
Well, we officially
have that terrible trade.
We have a drinking game. Take a drink every time we mention the Max Unger deal.
Oh no!
You should drink every time I do that because you'd be smashed. They're going to take Charles Cross. That's just the right pick for them at this spot with the guys that are there. Dwayne Brown is 37 years old. Yeah, he's 37 years old, and they need to build for the future. And the way you do that is through the offensive line. I tell you, if they don't go tackle here in this position and Charles Cross is still on the board, I fear for whatever quarterback they take next year because they're not going to have that Russell Wilson ultra athlete running around back there.
Right.
Protecting their offensive line's capabilities. You're going to see these quarterbacks get hit a lot next year.
Yeah, and
I wish the Jets had their pick next year because that'd be fantastic.
And you bring up the great point there, Justin, that Dwayne Brown, he's still not signed. Even if they bring him back, he's very old.
Not signed either.
He's still fine. Like I think he's still a decent tackle. Like obviously you need to get youth there, and Charles Cross makes sense. Rick, I'm going to go straight to you because this is your selection. You got all the Jets picks. We know at number 10. I could already tell by that reaction you wanted Charles Cross to fall. You just had one more pick, and you would have had him.
I wanted some tackle to fall to me. I wanted there to be Steph Curry, not Jordan goddamn Hill at 10. Jesus. But I'm going to make the best of this because I have a thought, and I have a thought in my mind here. The thought in my mind here is, if I'm the Jets, do I take 2 players in the secondary in my 2 top 10 picks? Because look, yes, you could argue that they need a wide receiver, and that's fine. You can argue that till the cows come home. I won't listen to you because I know who the receivers are.
So you're not going to go Jameson Williams?
I'm not going to answer that, Jurgen. What I will say, though, is that there's a player that
clearly would prefer Drake London, man. Come on.
I actually know. If all things are being equal, it would be Garrett Wilson at 10 because I'm thinking that if Ohio State stuck with, Nick Mangold versus, but no. So my thing is now we're looking at who's the best player available for a fit. And yeah, the Jets need a wide receiver, absolutely. But this is a deep wide receiver class, and maybe you can still get one out of free agency. But I'm looking at a player who was rated as maybe the number 1 prospect in this draft and fell down because of not a great pro day, but is still a very high ranking player. And the Jets don't have Jamal Adams or Marcus May. They need a safety. Give me Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame at number 10. Give me Kyle Hamilton because I think he's a player that's going to be a strong fit in a good spot for the Jets. And it's not like a guy where, Derek Stingley, where you're just looking at what he did in the season. Kyle Hamilton's 6'4", 220. He's a bruiser. He's a very strong, cover guy. And he's the most freak athlete in this class, I feel like, aside from Evan Neal. So for me, that's an easy one, Kyle Hamilton going at number 10. If he's there, you reshape that secondary with Gardner and Hamilton. You really make things a lot more difficult for guys like Josh Allen and Tagovailoa in the division.
And it's funny because a lot of people were concerned about his speed. You pick a Sauce Gardner, half the field being shut down. You ain't got to worry about this boy's speed anymore because he didn't have to cover as much as need be. No, that's honestly amazing, picking corner and safety with those two top 10 picks and really making the best out of a situation where your guy gets off the board That's how you do it right there. This is general managing 101. This is the show for these general managers to listen in and figure out how you do draft boards right. Rick, that was an amazing pick right there. Justin, I'm going to throw straight to you, of course, for your own thoughts of what this could be if this ends up being the Jets picks in real life, but also because you do have the Washington Commanders, sorry, Freudian slip, at number 11. So, give us your thoughts on the Jets and then pick for Washington.
I don't hate Kyle Hamilton, but I don't like this pick. This 2 secondary picks, Rick, they just signed Jordan Whitehead. They re-signed LaMarcus Joyner. They have some depth at safety, and they have so many other needs. And I'm not a huge receiver guy myself, but you got possible blue chip receivers that they've been clamoring for, like Jamison Williams, like Drake London, even Garrett Wilson, even though I don't think he's a great scheme fit in their offense. To go safety for a guy that might fall, especially when it's a fairly deep safety class as well. You have Lewis Stein going in the second round. They think maybe he comes up to the first, but there's Jaquan Brisker, who I really like out of Penn State. There's a lot of safeties that they could have taken early in the second round with one of those 2 picks. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about addressing the secondary twice in 10 picks, especially with a non-premium position.
There's 2 things that I'll say to you. Number one, the wide receiver draft is very deep, and that's where I have them going in the second round. And number 2, and number two, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. That's all I'm going to say.
Strong point. I can't argue.
That's all I'm going to say.
Justin, you got number 11 here, brother.
Yeah, I do. I was going to take Kyle Hamilton. I think Washington could really use a safety. But let's see who's on the board. They have some good edge players, although I don't think they're going to use necessarily an edge. They could probably use some secondary help. I don't necessarily know if they could pass up on a guy like Derek Stingley. He's had his injuries for sure, but I think all the hype about his injuries is going to be a bit overblown as far as the draft is concerned. And there's still talk that I'm hearing of him going in the top 4 or even top 3 picks of this year's draft. So I'm going to say Washington cannot pass up on talent. They're going to go Derek Stingley Jr. at 11.
Nice. Rick,
yeah,
your thoughts here will be interesting, but also you have the next 4 picks in this mock. We're going to go in ebbs and flows, ladies and gentlemen, of one of us just dominating a couple picks here in a row. This is one of the Rick sections here. He's got the Vikings, the Texans, the Ravens, and this Eagles pick. He has both Eagles picks, of course.
Everyone tune out for 10 minutes because I'm just going to talk, for 10 straight minutes. No, I'm kidding. No, the Stingley pick's a great pick. And again, he's one of those talented players in this draft. In the fall, somebody has to fall. And this year's candidate is Derek Stingley. I think the Commanders get a great pick at number 11 with him. And I think it's a very solid, talented athlete that, they needed. 12 for me, it's a no-brainer. This is a pick that I've seen going a lot of times. It's the cleanest fit. George Karlaftis to Minnesota is the cleanest fit. I think it's a good edge pick for them and somebody that they need on their defense as well. This is where it gets interesting, though, with 13, because the Texans are a team that I feel like could be a team that might need somebody that's a little more flashy. Mm-hmm. And this is where the Texans are going to go wide receiver. But the question is with who? That's the question. Who are you going to give Davis Mills to be your big, top, talented running wide receiver? And the thought is to go Jamison Williams because of the freakish nature of his athletic ability, but I'm gonna say they go Drake London at 13. I think they need a big target. They need a 6'4" target. I think Drake London's the guy, for Davis Mills. I think it's a good West Coast fit for that offense, and it gives him a strong wide receiver that can really fit over there in that system. Number 14 for the Ravens. Again, it's a clean fit here for me. Trent McDuffie out of Washington. It's a very clean fit, and it's somebody that they need. The Ravens are hungry in the secondary. They need a corner. And so to go with that route, I think is a good opportunity for them. The Eagles get interesting for me. The Eagles get really interesting because, this is the Eagles are a team that usually drafts surprisingly. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen that video of the Eagles fan when they drafted Derek Barnett and, he was not very happy. We've all seen that video. But Barnett's been a really solid player since. So I think, it's a trip where they're going to draft somebody. They're going to go for a need, but they're not going to go for the guy that's the top of that need at the moment. And I think where they're going to go, I think they reach a little bit here. I think they go to Kobe Dean at 15, the linebacker out of Georgia. Because yeah, Devin Lloyd is there, and I see him there, but I think Dean is a different type of athlete, comes out of a different pedigree, and is somebody who has a little bit more of a play to him. The range is amazing. He has really good reaction time and processing time. And I think that's what the Eagles are going to look for their defense. They're going to look for kind of a captain in their defense that's going to be of that Nakobe Dean mindset. And so to me, while it may be a little higher, like he could probably go at the end of the first round. I think if you're the Eagles, you take that risk now because you have the pick at 18 if you want to go for somebody else. And if Lloyd is still on the board, maybe you take two linebackers 15 to 18 potentially to rebuild that middle of the defense.
Wow. Right there. So that was 4 picks in a row. Boom, boom, boom. Very impressive stuff. So as I scrolled up and so we could all see, so Rick has George Karlaftis, the pass rusher to Minnesota at 12, Drake London to the Texans at 13, which I agree with because they re-signed Brendan Cooks. They already have the vertical deep threat. Get the guy who could be the red zone threat, who can win the 50-50 balls, catch it at the apex and still make some plays. He's essentially going to end up being what Will Fuller could have been for Houston had he been fully healthy potentially. And that's what Drake London does. Trent McDuffie, I actually haven't seen a lot of people mock him to Baltimore specifically, but I definitely see it because I think Marcus Peters is getting a little bit up there in age. You do have the number 1 in Marlon Humphrey, but it's not a bad thing to add youth to that secondary, especially, and then finishing with Nakobe Dean. I've more so seen like between Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd, I've seen them more so mocked to the second Eagles first round pick, but if you think he's the guy at 15 and you think maybe there's a chance that, the Saints or the Chargers could end up nabbing him, especially because the Chargers have really focused in on defense this offseason, why not go for him? So those 4 really good picks right there. I can't really disagree with a lot of them. I wouldn't say disagree. Maybe the Ravens, I'm still 50-50 on because I think they do need another receiver there, but this receiver class is just so deep. You could go with receiver with one of your later picks, and you get a guy like a Trent McDuffie to reinvigorate the secondary, which I believe the secondary did have some injury issues. Well, the whole team did really, but the secondary as well. Not bad right there. Justin, the next pick does belong to you before we go right back to Rick. Deliberate on these selections as well. And has it affected your mindset at all with the Saints pick at 16?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that the Saints could probably use a little bit of linebacker help. I don't think it's necessarily one of their needs. The wide receiver pick really shapes things. I think for the Texans, I might have gone Garrett Wilson. I think he's just a better scheme fit. Drake London doesn't project to me as that down the field burner, although they do have Brandon Cooks, but it adds to the depth of their offense. You don't know which way either one of them is going to go. But I love Drake London. I love his pass catch radius. I think that if they would have gone Garrett Wilson at 13, the Ravens would have taken Drake London. Either Drake London or Jameson Williams. I think that they need another receiver there. Hollywood Brown he's so inconsistent with his hands. They really need someone that can catch the ball. And I love the Nakobe Dean pick, especially if you pull that off and Devin Lloyd is not taken in between, and they do double linebacker. Oof, that's going to be a scary defense down the middle. I can't imagine how a lot of teams would match up with that. But as for my pick with the Saints, you got to look at who's available and who's needed. I don't think that they stay at this pick in the real draft. You don't make that kind of move to trade for another pick in the middle of the round of the first round if you're not looking to get assets to trade up. They're going to go all in. I wouldn't think they would take it at 16 where we are now, but I could certainly see them taking a receiver, a quarterback in this draft. I'm not going to let him pass up on Jameson Williams, though. I'm gonna go Jameson Williams at 16. I think he'd be excellent against alongside a healthy Michael Thomas and their receivers there. They are going to need to get a quarterback at some point. I just think they fall. They're not necessarily quarterbacks that are going to need to go in this round. What do you think about that one, Rick?
Yeah, listen, I think it's a really strong pick for them. And it adds another element to their offense. It gives them another person who's really going to be a good deep threat, a really strong deep threat in that class. And I think it's something that's incredibly significant for them to have. They need somebody like that. They need a good wide receiver to have on their offense. And so I feel like it's a matter of, like you said, with these wide receivers, it could be anybody. I think it blends in well for me, for the next few picks. But I think London, Williams, they go pretty significantly. I feel like
Yeah,
in that
it
mindset.
it's almost a shame that he's the kind of guy that tore his ACL in the championship game. I mean, he was a clearly top receiver in this draft. He had that all-out speed. He's a big-bodied kid. He's got the hands. He's probably got arguably the best hands in this draft. And to blow out your ACL and have him drop like that to 16 at the Saints. I mean, if this kid comes back healthy, that's a steal. Their offense is going to be something fierce, especially once they get Kamara back from what I'm sure is going to be a suspension, probably a shorter one, 4 to 6 games. But their offense is shaping up to be a good, solid. It's going to be full of weapons. It's going to be a solid offense. They do need to replace tackle, I think. In a no trade draft, maybe that's where I go next round. Next pick, because it's coming up in 3 picks.
Right.
But let's see who's there. So why don't you? Are you the Chargers pick?
Yeah, I have, I believe, the Chargers and the Eagles, and then you have the Saints coming up. So I have 17 and 18, which really lends in very well for me because I think exactly where I'm going to go at 18. But 17 is a very interesting case. 17, the Chargers were 1 player away, 1 pick away, and I think that they need that extra little helping hand when it comes to how their offense runs. Justin Herbert needs somebody else, to be able to throw the ball to. And I mean, now if you're the Chargers, you up their defense with J.C. Jackson. I think the honest choice here is to go with Garrett Wilson at 17 from Ohio State. I think it just makes the most sense for them. And again, once you get into the middle of the rounds, I think what happens is that it becomes like best player available and best need. And I feel like this is a case where it just matches up really nicely for them because Garrett Wilson's a good wide receiver that they need a good fit. And so I feel like in this regard, yeah, go for it.
So let me ask, do you think Garrett Wilson devalues the Mike Williams re-sign?
No, as much as I want to say,
very similar style of player.
They are a very similar style of player. However, I think what it does is it allows you to have another option and allows you to kind of let Garrett Wilson kind of learn a couple different ways. Like he can break through in the slot, be a 6-foot slot receiver who's still got some speed, but also be a guy who can learn under Mike Williams and be there for those 5 wide sets very early on. I think that's the big key. Like, yeah, I understand the whole idea of not wanting to learn a lot when you're in this kind of mindset, but at the same time, the opportunity is there for a receiver like a Garrett Wilson to be able to just showcase his talent in a higher capacity of this regard. And so for me, I think it's something that's critical. And again, the Chargers, we've talked for weeks about the arms race in the West. I think adding another kind of receiver, another kind of body that's there makes a whole lot of sense for them. And again, I feel like the Chargers would go wide receiver because if you looked at what their needs were, their needs were wide receiver, tackle, or corner. That's their top 3 needs according to what the simulators
I was gonna say that's what Pro Football Focus is. But I gotta think they have Donald Parham there that they drafted last year. They still have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams that have been excellent receiving threats for them. You got to keep Justin Herbert up. You got some concerns at run defense. You don't think that they could possibly go Devin Wyatt here or, maybe reach for a tackle or something like that? They do have to replace what's his name that he signed from the Packers last year that got injured and then was consequently cut at the end of the last season, beginning of the offseason this year. You don't think that they reach up for a tackle or something like that?
See, the thing is that I could see them reaching for a tackle, but my thing is, is that almost too high still for a tackle in that regard? Like, there's not what the thing is that with the offensive line, once you get past Cross and Ekwonu and Neal, the drop off is so far to Bernhard Raimann. And I mean, Bernhard Raimann's a guy who was a tight end in college for a couple of years and then became a tackle. So, I mean, and again, look, Raimann's stats are great, but again, take them with a grain of salt because we're talking about Central Michigan. We're talking about the Mid-American Conference. You're not facing all world beaters here. You're facing Toledo. You're facing Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green. Great nicknames, the Rockets, the Red Hawks, and the Falcons, don't get me wrong, but you're not facing world beaters. And so to me, it's almost a case where, like, yeah, you want to keep Justin Herbert upright. I agree. But if you put somebody there who's going to be overwhelmed in a very early on and seeing ghosts very early on, it's not going to do him very well. I think that's a case where, and for Devontae Wyatt could have been a possibility for the Chargers at 17 as well for, a defensive interior or Jordan Davis. But, again,
Can you imagine Devontae Wyatt in the middle of that defense with Joey Bosa on one side and Khalil Mack on the other?
Yeah, I could absolutely see it. It's a hard thing to kind of go away from, but at the same time, I feel like you have to give Herbert all the weapons that he needs, and then rebuild that interior with stronger weapons, maybe later on, or maybe through like training camp, build up stronger players. And so for me, I think the Garrett Wilson selection rather made a lot of sense. So I think that's something that was just ideal in their world.
Gotta love technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen, to say the very least. Gentlemen, thank you for bearing with that. And I have a phone call to make after this. What did I miss, fellas? What selections were made?
Jameson Williams went 16, and Garrett Wilson went 17.
We're starting to have a run on receivers.
Both of those I could very much see. So Jameson there, and you said Garrett Wilson to the Chargers.
Yeah. Yep.
Beautiful.
Which then brings me to 18. And Justin, I think you mentioned it. This really falls into their hands so perfectly. Devin Lloyd goes 18 to the Eagles. It gives them two core young linebackers that they can really, Dean and Devin, they can really just make a whole merchandise stand with that, because they're going to be feared in the NFC East. And it really can tip the balance in favor, because really what it does too is it takes a lot of pressure off of Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, because I feel like he's been forcing it a lot of the times with this offense because their defense has kind of been hit or miss. But now you add two young core linebackers that can really make things harder for offenses on the other side. I think it really provides them with a lot of opportunity to kind of give Jalen Hurts more time to settle and focus and really become a much better quarterback over there. So I think it's a no-brainer for Philadelphia. They really need those core linebackers there. I think it makes the most sense.
That's building a Tampa Bay type style. Two dominant linebackers. You think of the work that Levante David and Devin White did in that Super Bowl run. Rick said, "Forget your wide receiver projections that some people are doing. We want the real studs. We want both linebackers."
Do you consider Tyler Linderbaum? Kelsey's got a 1-year contract. He's 38 years old. They're going to need a center.
I consider him, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like for me, center is maybe one of the easier positions to maneuver somebody into on the offensive line. Like, you can teach somebody cadences, you can teach somebody snapping and timing. I think for defense, for Devin Lloyd and the Kobe Dean, you can't teach their speed and their intangibles. And I think it really makes a huge difference for them on that defensive side. I feel like Linderbaum is a close runner-up, but I feel like if you've got a guy there as a linebacker that you could just throw right in, you go for it. You don't miss that projection.
Now here's where I struggle, because again, I don't think the Saints make this pick.
You think they trade both 16 and 19? You think?
I don't see any other way to move up. They don't have a first round pick next year. They don't have a second round pick.
Okay.
So they're gonna have to do something. They do have a second round pick this year. They don't have a second round pick next year. So they're gonna have to make some sort of move. Do they go offense? I mean, according to Pro Football Focus, all of their needs are offense. I do think that they had a few defensive positions they could have filled last year, although a lot of it was due to injury. I think you got to go tackle, and I think here they're going to reach up and get Bernhard Raymond, the tackle out of Central Michigan. He was an excellent defender this year. Like you said, he did have a small pedigree out of the Mid-American Conference, but they're not going to go quarterback this year. They got Jameis for 2 years. Not Jameis. Jameis. They got Jameis for 2 years.
Well, they do have Jameson based upon your draft, so
for
That's
more than
true.
2 years.
Jameis and Jameson.
Jameis to Jameson is going to be the connection this year, but if they don't get that trade done, and this is where they pick, they're going to revamp their offensive line and they're going to prepare for whatever quarterback they take next year. I expect them to be somewhere in the middle of the draft again next year, although they don't have their first round pick. So they'll probably have to see what they could do to trade up. But yeah, if they can't trade up for the quarterback, this is what they're going to have to do.
Wow. So no risks on Matt Corral or Desmond Ridder, who have been two very popular names, especially Ridder of potentially being a first. Some people have said Ridder could really sky up there.
Listen, I'm tempted for it, but they're a trade up team. They're gonna go out for one of those top talented guys. If they think that Ridder or even like Corral is someone that'll surprise some people, if they think that that's the top talent guy, sure. If I'm making the pick, I'm taking a tackle. They need the production out of Kamara. They're gonna need to protect whoever's back there. They lost Teron Armstead to the Dolphins. If I can't trade up and get the quarterback I want, I got to take the best player available, even if it means I lost that trade with Philly. I'm not going to get worse just because I'm trying to get better and make a mistake.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of which, Justin, you keep on going here because this pick also belongs to you. The Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20. And are you going to go with the most mock pick I've seen so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's just an excellent fit there. It is everything that Mike Tomlin wants in his football team and more. Tyler Linderbaum, the center out of Iowa. It's also paining me that like we're going very by the book to the standards of pro football.
Oh, don't worry.
It's 20. This is how it goes.
I'm going to throw you off at 21. Don't worry.
Are you?
Oh yeah, I am.
Because
I kind of want him to just get to it already because I think we know Tyler Linderbaum. We've said enough about him, Justin. He's the best center of this draft class for a reason.
And I don't think they take a quarterback. I know they were infatuated with Malik Willis, but he's gone already, so they're not getting him at 20.
Agreed. I think if both Willis and Pickett are gone, I don't think they're even going to look at quarterback.
I think that the Steelers are another team that's primed to move up. They do have a few assets in the first few rounds. They don't have a ton of picks this year, but they have some picks next year. I would not be surprised if you see the Steelers moving up 5-10 picks, see if they can get a stab at Willis if he's available. I'd keep my eye on it.
Which they've done before. I mean, not for a quarterback per se, but remember a couple of years ago, they did trade up for Devin Bush. And a lot of people forget that they did that. And it gave him a really good player for his first 2 years. I want to say last year was a very injury-riddled season. So some downfall since his rookie campaign when that team just in general was performing like lights out. But hey, he could always bounce back. And we'll see if come draft day in and of itself, the Steelers could end up doing the same. But Linderbaum, the most consistent mock to the Steelers I've seen. I think it makes a whole ton of sense. Well, let's see.
There. No, listen, I need to put a qualifier here, Rick. We know, all right? I hate him just as much as you can. But for the sake of the show, you can't go and draft the lowest rated punter at the 21st pick.
Give me Ryan Stonehouse to Colorado State. No, I'm kidding.
I know you said you're going to shake it up, but
no, I'm going to shake it up, but I'm going to shake it up for a reason that I think is going to work here. And I think it's something that I really feel kind of in my heart like this could really be a really good pick because of how well he rose up during the Senior Bowl. Now, let me ask you, I'm forgetting here.
Oh, I think I know who he's going with.
Who did you guys have at 21 last week for the Patriots? Do you guys remember?
I had Jermaine Johnson, I want to say.
Okay. Justin, do you remember who you had 21 last week?
I think I went linebacker.
Yeah,
Dean or Lloyd.
He had one of them, yeah.
So I'm going to tell you who I'm going to go with. I'm going to base this here. The Patriots have a really strong connection to that New England area, but also have a really strong connection to that defensive tackle space. Richard Seymour and Vince Wilfork were big guys in the nose that were stopping them. So I think they're going to go interior defense, but I don't think they're going for the guy you're thinking of. Give me Travis Jones from UConn at 21. Now, here's the reason why. I feel like Jones is a player who's got a little more of a length to him. Like, yes, Jordan Davis is 360, so he's definitely a run stopper. But Jones at 6'5" is a little taller, a little more rangy. And in the Senior Bowl, he was a monster. He had over 20 pressures. He was an absolute beast in the Senior Bowl. And I think it's a really good fit for that team. I think it's a player that's going to come off the board very early. It's going to be a big surprise, but I think it's a player that's going to fit really well in that New England defensive system. They need another strong D tackle on that side. I think it's a bold pick, but I think it's a pick that really works for them. And I think the Patriots, no doubt, will go D interior. I can see them going Wyatt or Davis, but give me Travis Jones just for the fun of it. Why not? Let him run wild and see what happens.
What a pick right there. I will say this though, Rick. I have heard a lot of people praise Travis Jones recently because I think going to UConn is not a football school.
No, it's not.
Here. And the fact that him being really the main piece on that defense and that defensive line, and he still was just the record that he was and showed he could be. And Senior Bowl, while I think there's ups and downs when it comes to it, he is facing other top tier draft quality prospects there. And to your point, he dominated. And I think the thing is, this definitely feels like a Bill Belichick pick because a couple years ago, I forget, it may have just been before, it was either the last season of Brady or like just after he left that draft. But he selected the safety with like the first pick that the Pats had. I don't think it was the first rounder, but Kyle Duggar. And like that kind of caught people out of nowhere. And this kind of feels like a pick in that same quality. I don't necessarily I'm not going to agree or disagree with it. Not the way I thought you were going to go. I thought you were probably going to maybe go for one of the edge rushers per se, because I think like the number one, and not saying Travis Jones can't do this, but getting after the quarterback with Josh Allen in that division, who knows what Tua and Zach Wilson could become, but mainly the focus being on Josh Allen, that could be a thing. But maybe Travis Jones helps with that.
Look, I had initially thought about them going Chris Olave at 21, a wide receiver from Ohio State, because I thought that would be too by the book. But and it's another good fit for them. But they did just pick up Devontae Parker. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's uncharacteristic for the Patriots, but I think this is a different team. It's not the Tom Brady Patriots anymore. It's a different mindset. And so, again, you put somebody out there who's going to change the defensive scheme to really give, your offense a chance to win more games. I think it's a good fit. I think it's a player who's got a lot of upside, a lot of potential.
You mentioned Chris Olave. Justin, 22 belongs to you.
Yeah, so
Javon Walker was the last time a wide receiver was drafted in the first round by Green Bay. Are we going wide receiver here?
So the reason that we did this mock draft this way is because I wanted us to be able to strategize. If we're going to do a full 3 rounds, you got to make sure you're keeping with the same strategy that you think the team should make. And so it's a perfect example with the Green Bay Packers. They have pick 22, they have pick 28, and strategy-wise, what I think they're going to do is they'll take 2 quarterbacks, Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder. Okay. So I was thinking about that build up the whole time to make that joke.
Pretty realistic, actually. They could still do that.
Bravo.
Yeah. Thank you. So they do have a few needs. Everyone is going to be clamoring for them to get a receiver. I don't necessarily think it's huge here. They do have another pick in a few picks. And what I think they really need to revamp the most is going to be their offensive line. They could use some help at guard. And I think they're going to go Zion Johnson out of Boston College. He's an excellent guard. He's an excellent run blocker, because he doesn't need to stuff his own run. And that team, as much as everyone loves to talk about the 2-time back-to-back MVP, Aaron Rodgers, they're going as that running game goes with Aaron Jones. And they're going to need someone to help keep the quarterback on their feet and help keep those defenses honest. So I think they go guard here. There's plenty of other selections. I don't think you're going to see a run of receivers in between now and then. So it's going to be an interesting gamble. But I think that they address the offensive line. They keep Aaron Rodgers on his feet first.
Not a bad pick.
I think it's a bona fide excellent pick because Johnson's stats, he only allowed 1 sack last year and just under 800 offensive snaps. I mean, honestly, it's a really, really good pick for Green Bay. And it makes sense for Jordan Love when he takes over in a couple of years.
I mean, they do need to surround that team eventually when he does have to take over. So that could very much well be the case. Okay, here. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back officially. In the time between my picks, we had a lot of great selections go. We also had my internet go out for a very brief period of time, so that was fun.
You did not select Xfinity with your first round pick. Let's put it
not anymore. Who knows what the heck happened? But We are finally back. I am back on the mic, but I'm not going to take up too much of everybody's time. We got 4 straight teams right here: Cardinals, Cowboys, Bills, Titans. We're going to keep it, pretty simple here. We're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. Could go in a lot of different directions. This was my guy right here. This was my guy, and it hurt me that you took him, Justin, because Zion Johnson was definitely going to be my pick with the Cardinals. I think that they need to add to the offensive line. I know it points out guard and center specifically, and Zion Johnson would just been an amazing fit there. But since
somebody had to. He's screaming with Charles Cross, so somebody did it to you too, so it works.
Hey, it's a very fair point. So I look at the board here.
Get you off.
And I just look at the fact that they lost some pass rush in Chandler Jones. Yes, J.J. Watt's there, but he's been so injury-riddled. They need a guy that can help get to the quarterback. There's still some pretty good quarterbacks in that division. One team in particular that absolutely slaughtered them in the playoffs last year. This is a guy that can really help them get to quarterback. Transferred from Georgia, went to Florida State, wanted to be on his own defensive line, and really proved himself and showed out when it came to performing in his big year in college. Give me Jermaine Johnson with the Arizona Cardinals selection right there. Not going to waste any more time. Let's get straight to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, it's really interesting here. It says some of the needs. They could definitely use a defensive lineman per se after the departure of Randy Gregory. Yes, you have Micah Parsons there, and yes, you still have DeMarcus Lawrence, but pass rush is never a bad option. Offensive line, also, they've had some hits amongst the O-line, really, when you look at it. I see some very interesting selections here. Old buddy over here out of Northern Iowa is definitely a guy that I would look at and give serious consideration to. And you know what? That's exactly what I'm going to do. He could play tackle. He could play guard. They've really needed a guy, and I'm going to go with the safe pick here, even though this is very un-Jerry Jones-like. I'm going to go with Trevor Penning here at 24th overall. I just think it makes sense. They had to get rid of Collins. They've lost a couple – he was a center, but they lost Travis Frederick a couple of years ago. That offensive line has fallen off. They need to restack and retool there. And, hey, Trevor Penning played at left tackle. Eventually, when Tyrone Smith has to retire, maybe he slides over to the left tackle position. You just never know. Buffalo, interesting. It only has 2 needs for them. I think it's a little bit more than that. I think they could always use youth along the offensive line personally. Not with a first-round pick, especially not this year's draft, but a running back could be an option for them for later picks, obviously. And, you got 57 and 89 here to address those potentially. But I'm going to look at the defensive line more specifically here. I think there are a lot of options that they could go with, or at least I would look at the defensive line. But I like a wide receiver here. There's some really interesting options that the Bills could go with here. My thing is, you locked in Stephon Diggs. I know, I believe it is Gabriel Davis is his name, had that big playoff game against the Chiefs. Yeah. But they still need more talent for Josh Allen to throw through. You really saw at the beginning of the season when Stephon Diggs struggled, he struggled. I think what Buffalo needs, they need to go for a receiver here that could really help things out. And they need to go with a guy that could really just add a different mold to that offense. And I think they need – Stephon Diggs is great. You can put him anywhere. I think same with Gabe Davis. I think they need a bigger guy. They need a bigger body to box people out. Not a lot of people may have said this so far, but I'm going to go with Treylon Burks as their receiver. I'm going to go with him out of Arkansas. I think he's the quote-unquote discount Drake London of this class. They do a lot of the same things. A lot of people aren't ranking him as highly, but I think Treylon Burks is really good. I think he's got reliable hands. He can box guys out. He can be a red zone threat as well. I love the selection. They need a guy. I know Dawson Knox is technically there, but let's get the receivers in this more. Let's build up that room for Josh Allen, and let's just add another weapon to the arsenal. And with my final first-round pick in my mini run here, I got the Tennessee Titans. A lot of different places I could go to here. It's a very similar situation. I wasn't going to pick this guy, but because Zion Johnson would have also been a guy that I would have considered right here, Kenyon Green is very much an option to select here. And I think, they kept some of the defense intact. They re-signed Harold Landry. They got Bud Dupree. I think you could wait a little bit to potentially try to go after another pass rusher. I think you got to go with Kenyon Green here out of Texas A&M. You lost a little bit of the offensive line with Roger Saffold leaving. Let's get some youth there. Get a guy in there. Help. You were talking about the running game leading the way. The running game leads the way in the Tennessee Titans offense, and that's what the Kenyon Green selection is there to help out, to continue to allow King Henry to be the rushing king of the NFL. And those are my 4 picks real quick. To summarize, Jermaine Johnson to the Cardinals, Trevor Penning to the Cowboys, Treylon Burks to the Bills, and Kenyon Green to the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, the Treylon Burks ones hurts me. It really hurts me because he's he's the risk of this first round. I think. I mean, as much as Travis Jones is, I think he's a guy that could be a boom or bust. I mean, he's a very, very good player for Arkansas, but oof, 25 to Buffalo, that's interesting. And the Trevor Penning into Dallas is a really good fit. He's exactly what Dallas needs. Dallas needs a strong farmer strength, farm boy interior strength out of Northern Iowa.
I was considering Kenyon Green to Dallas, but I remember that Penning was there, and I'm like, oh, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. I mean, he could play guard or tackle anyways, but I think specifically right tackle, and again, could take over for Tyron Smith in the future.
Definitely.
I think it was an option. Justin, you got quite a few picks here, actually. If we look at
you roughed up my pick, Jurg.
Oh,
the Packers. The Packers.
You have the Buccaneers pick. You have the other.
Yeah, and Xfinity's roughing him up too now, so it works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's not beautiful, boys. Let's keep at
it. So that's where my gamble was for the Packers.
Is that vodka in there, Jurg?
Water. Although after this Xfinity service, we may need vodka.
Yeah.
No, I had them falling in love with Treylon Burks at 28, but unfortunately they're not going to be able to make that pick. First goes the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are they've fallen into a great problem to have. I definitely think they need to start reworking some of that defense. They need some help in the secondary. I think that they could probably use another receiver, although I don't think they take one at this point in the draft. And realistically, they gotta keep up that strength of their team. And the strength of their team last year was rushing the passer and stopping the run. Their defensive line has gotten old, and I think an injection of youth would be fantastic for them. The question is, who do you take? Both of those Georgia boys are just excellent. I think Jordan Davis is a better run stuffer, but Devontae Wyatt is just that freak athlete on the defensive line. He had all those pressures last year. He's got to work a little bit on his run defense, but they got run defense to spare down there. I think you put him alongside Ndamukong Suh and all those pass rushers, and you're gonna develop that kid into something strong. So I'm gonna go Devontae Wyatt with my first pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 27. And at 28, I'm gonna cry. That's what it is. You took my Treylon Burks pick. I thought that was going to be the steal of the draft for the Packers. He's the best comp, I think, to Devontae Adams that is in this draft. I don't think he is Devontae Adams, but he does a lot of those same things: running down the field, going over the middle, catching those contested balls. They're gonna have to. They're lucky at this point that Olave fell to them. So at this point, they need to draft a receiver. They just do. I figured that if a receiver was going to go, it would go to the Bills or the Cowboys. I thought Olave would be gone. So
yeah,
as much as I wanted Treylon Burks, as much as I loved that fit, Chris Olave is obviously going to be the pick to the Packers at 28 in this situation. Kansas City is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because you have something to say about that, Rick?
No, Chris Olave, I agree with you. Should go. I think he'll go higher, but I think this is a beautiful spot for him to fall.
I think if any of them fall, any of those top 4 receivers fall, it is Olave.
Yeah.
But I mean, to get drafted into a league where you have Aaron Rodgers throwing to you is not really a bad problem to have.
Yeah.
I also the main reason I went with Burks over Chris Olave is because I think Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis fit so similar of a mold. I think they need that different receiver in there, kind of like with the Texans, Drake London versus Brendan Cooks. Like, I think you need a different guy in there ultimately. And Josh Allen, again, I think it was a real thing. Look at the beginning of last season when Davis hadn't broken out yet, when Stephon Diggs was not 100%, when Cole Beasley was still there. And I think Cole Beasley at this point, to me at least, he's not as much of a positive as he was in his younger years.
Cole Beasley's gone, I think. Didn't they cut him?
Well, but that's also what I'm saying. Like, I think he was there last season. Now they cut him. It's like you need depth there. I mean, maybe they don't go after receiver with their first round selection, but I think you might as well, especially because Buffalo, like, their picks are so spread out. Take a guy right now, and I think Treylon Burks, I agree, is boom or bust. Whether he had gone to Green Bay or Buffalo, like he's got a franchise quarterback throwing him the ball.
I will say I do think Buffalo is a very serious chance of going interior defensive line with one of these guys, either Wyatt or Davis. They were the number 1 defense in yards per game last year, and they were like 12th against the run. So that's just something that I would look out for. If these guys fall, Buffalo's a serious contender to take an interior defensive lineman. But this brings us to Kansas City, and I think, this is the most important draft for Kansas City in a very long time. People will say, the Mahomes draft was important because of what it did for them. It brought them to Super Bowl. They didn't. It's not like going into that draft, everyone was clamoring for a quarterback. They still had Alex Smith. They still, were a decent team with Andy Reid. I think that this is the year that is going to really determine which direction this Kansas City Chiefs team go. They have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds, 2 in each round, and they have a lot of holes. They lost Tyreek Hill. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. They have some offensive line woes. Their running game hasn't worked out, and they're really going to need to adjust to the league and the way it's changing. I think they're going to go secondary with both picks. So I'm going to take Andrew Booth Jr. with the first pick.
That's a good pick
for them. They really need the secondary help. They've been rough in the secondary. They have not been able to really stop people. Anyone that could throw over the top has been able to compete with Kansas City. And if they want to, keep up with some of these young teams like Cincinnati, that's going to throw the ball all day long, they're going to need to start bringing in some defense. And that'll certainly help their pass rushers too, because their pass rush is getting old. With the second pick, I have them going Lewis Cine out of Georgia. He's an excellent safety. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. I know they brought in Reed. They need more than one player. You play 2 safeties for a reason. And for them to address their secondary so strongly in the first round, I think it would be an excellent win for Kansas City.
Not bad at all. I think we've mentioned it already. I think both Green Bay and Kansas City come to actual draft day, they could definitely be contenders to potentially trade up. But I think that, like a lot of people, I think they're saying that Kansas City doesn't have a lot of holes to fill. I kind of have to disagree. That secondary needs a lot of reworking. Like you said, Reed is there. I like the Justin Reed signing when they got him, but I think Juan Thornhill provides some it's inconsistent when it comes to him being one of your starting safeties.
They need help on both sides of the ball too.
Yeah.
They have secondary help. They need defensive line help. They need offensive line help. They need wide receiver help. I know they made a couple of signings, but that's not going to plug the hole that Tyreek Hill just left you. You're going to see a lot of doubles on Travis Kelce, and I don't think Hardman is as great as everyone has always said he was. He's a good receiver, but he's not a number 1 guy there. He benefited greatly from having a burner like Tyreek Hill, and I don't necessarily think Valdez-Scantling and who was the other receiver that they picked up?
Juju, old TikTok.
Juju
Jackson Mahomes' teammate.
While I do think the Juju TikToks in Kansas City will improve that team, I do think Juju's a good receiver, and he'll benefit greatly with Patrick Mahomes there. I don't think it's a replacement. It's just not a replacement for Tyreek Hill.
And don't forget also that, I mean, we saw in the AFC title game, the offense was at full strength, but all it took was one player on the defense to go down in Tyrann Mathieu, and that blew up Kansas City's defense entirely. So if you can fill that void with a Lewis Cine or a Andrew Booth Jr. like Kansas City just did here, or both of them, that's huge. That adds 2 players on the defense that can together do what Tyrann Mathieu does just in 2 body form. So therefore, it makes a lot of sense for them to kind of shore that up. Because again, we've been talking about it, how the AFC West is that arm race. Well, if Kansas City wants to try and win it, they need to rebuild that defense because you're not going to win shootouts every single week. So it makes the most sense for them to build up on the defense.
Absolutely. And speaking of building up and improving the secondary a little bit, next up is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know the needs are right there. Guard and center. How could you think of anything else? Yes, the Bengals do still need to retool the line a little bit. But here's the thing. They've made such a significant free agency investment into this team. I think they've bought themselves the benefit of the doubt that they can go with another selection here in the first round. You got I believe it was Alex Kappa from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got Lyle Collins from the Dallas Cowboys. You even signed Ted Karras as well. So I think all things considered here, you have the flexibility per se to be able to go after another position. So I'm going to do in vein of what Justin just did. I'm going to go after the defensive backs. And I believe he's listed as a corner. Yes, he is. There's some flexibility here with him. Daxton Hill. He's one of those guys that you can even line it up at safety a little bit. I think he'd be a very good weapon on that Kansas City defense. Kansas City as well, actually. But Cincinnati defense, Daxton Hill, it would be great. Eli Apple just got torn up last season. And I think you need to get a guy in there to really help. So I got Daxton Hill as my pick to the Cincinnati Bengals. And let's not waste any more time. I have two of the next 3 picks belong to the Detroit Lions. You can do a lot of different things here. Here's where I'm going to go because Detroit, they've done such a good job that you can go a number of different ways here if you are the Detroit Lions and how you could build this up. This is my thing, and this is why I'm going to go with this pick. Amon-Ra St. Brown, supremely talented. I loved him that pick last year. They signed DJ Chark in the offseason. Good. You see what's happening to these receivers. You are now starting to risk the idea that these receivers want to be paid early. So what's an extremely valuable asset to have? The 5th-year option. And I look at what the Detroit Lions could potentially have here at wide receiver. There are some pretty interesting choices here. A lot of different guys that could go. It's really a pick your poison on some of these guys, especially these first couple names here. I'm going to go with a guy here. He's just going to end up being a pure speedster. He's just going to stretch the field vertically for them. Now, granted, is Jared Goff throwing, and how much are you really going to stretch the field with Jared Goff? But at the same time, for the next quarterback that comes down the line with an arm, Sky Moore out of Western Michigan would be an excellent pick. An excellent pick here to just add another weapon to the offense. That completes round 1 of our 3-round mock. Oh dear, we have so much more to go. Let's not waste any more time. As Rick, I did it again to him.
We all knew that was this guy.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine.
You'll be all right. Rick.
So Justin, let's go to you right here real quick because for people are going to see you do have to step away here just for a very brief moment. So make your Jacksonville Jaguars pick real quick, and then me and Rick will tear it up. I mean, analyze it properly with the remaining time we have, because a lot of picks between me and Rick coming up here.
Yeah, so I really thought that you were going to go the other way, Jurgen. I thought maybe we could go receiver with Jacksonville, but I'm gonna flip my script a little bit. Jacksonville was a rough team last year. They were in the bottom half of the league in rushing defense. They were in the bottom half of the league in sacks. They just took Aiden Hutchinson, and I think they addressed that run defense now with the guy that just fell to them in Jordan Davis. I pair him up with Josh Allen and Aiden Hutchinson, and all of a sudden you have a really young, strong defensive line in the vein of Washington, although they're farther ahead at this point because you got to say they have a better offensive line and better quarterback play at this point, or at least more favorable quarterback play. I think that they just can't pass up that opportunity at this point. They really go all in on their defensive line this offseason.
The value on that pick is phenomenal too, because of Davis falling into the early 2nd round. That saves Jacksonville a ton of money, which they're going to commit to Christian Kirk, obviously. So it works.
and all those other guys that they signed this offseason as well. Great pick, Justin. I agree. Jordan Davis, I think he's an interesting guy who's really rocketed up. I think his value is ultimately maybe a late 1st-round pick, if not an early 2nd-round pick, in regards to when he should be selected. Jordan Davis as well, because I immediately I don't know if he projects to be a 3-down guy quite yet. Maybe he can ultimately morph into that, but if not, him just being a two down guy, especially when it comes to the running plays, especially in that division. You got Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry there. You need a big boy, you need a big fella to help defend that. So I think that was a very excellent selection here.
I also just want to say, Jurg, I love that Cincinnati pick. They've really addressed the offensive line already. If one of these linemen doesn't fall to them, that's their big concern for me is the secondary pick. They have a safety there. He's done well. He had a rough year last year, but realistically, he's really the only guy they have back there. They needed a cornerback, and I think Daxton Hill's an excellent pick for that.
I think you could have also seen Elam or Petrie go in that late 1st-round pick as well. But I believe Daxton Hill makes a good case as well.
That's the beauty between the Bengals and the Lions. I think there's a lot of flexibility with the two of them, especially the Lions having a pick right there. And hey,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to waste any time here, Rick, because honestly, you just said the name of the guy that I'm going to go with here.
Which one?
Kaiir Elam. I think Detroit needs a little bit more defense. I think getting a guy to put alongside old buddy that they got from Ohio State a couple of years ago, I think Kaiir Elam has fallen to a lot of people. And I kind of don't get why. I think he's a really talented kid. I think he could end up making plays. And if you're Detroit in that division with the Green Bay Packers, Devontae Adams may not be there, but Aaron Rodgers is still the quarterback. You have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen in Minnesota. And then there's the Chicago Bears, so you get a little bit of a break. But I think you have all that to consider. Kaiir Elam, I think, could be a really big help to that secondary. Could help make a couple plays there. It could make some really good stops on the defensive side of things. So I got to go with Kaiir Elam for Detroit. And I think for Detroit, it's all about setting things up for the quarterback down the line. And I just don't think you need to pick a quarterback in these first 3 picks. I've seen some people try to mock Detroit picking QB at 32 and 34. No, I think you just need to keep building up that team, man. You got something going here. Keep on giving Motor City Dan Campbell, good old MCDC, some weapons. You got Thibodeau at 2 in our mock, Sky Moore at 32, which I think would be outstanding, and then Kaiir Elam here at 34. Those are pieces to this team.
Absolutely. I mean, those are excellent, weapons and excellent pieces that you mentioned. And those are guys that, you look at this draft, you look at their projections, you fall in love with these guys. Like I fell in love with Sky Moore. That's why I hate you for what you did. Because but the thing is that's funny is that, depending on how you look at the draft, you can see guys that just either fall or rise really high for some reason, and you're not really sure why. I mean, it's interesting to see how the draft shakes out in all that regard. So, and it leads right into my pick at 35 with the Jets. Now, it's funny that Justin just, stepped away because, he was like, how do you not take a receiver at 10, right? Well, that's what I'm going to do here at 35. I mean, it's clearly a deep enough receiver class that you can do something like that. But the question is, what receiver do you take? Sky Moore would have been a great burner for them, but they need somebody who's going to be a number 1 option. They need somebody who's going to be a great route runner and somebody who's going to have that ability to just make a lot of plays. Now, I'm tempted to go with Christian Watson on North Dakota State. I'm tempted to go with him because of the frame and the body. However, one thing that does concern me a lot is what we call the Evan Ingram effect, the amount of drops that he has in open field play. And that's the reason why he's listed as a 3rd-round guy. But there's another guy out there, and it's going to be – so with the Jets here in the 2nd round, I'm going to reach both times.
Okay.
Because, A, I've fallen in love with both of these players, and B, they fit needs that otherwise could have been filled, but might not have made sense with other players. So with this one, I'm going wide receiver. Oh, good, Justin's back. So he's just in time for me to destroy my pick. Just in time
to destroy my dreams, yeah.
I was saying that this is why I'm going wide receiver here at 35. And I was thinking of Christian Watson here, but Watson's drop problems are a big issue for me. Jurgen,
sounds like a classic Jets pick.
Right? I'm at this pick going Jalen Tolbert out of South Alabama.
Oh, wow.
I think so. Here's my thing with Tolbert. This is a guy who last year had, 16 deep receptions, deep ball catches. You need an upgrade from Corey Davis, and you need somebody who's going to be a guy who's a ball hawk, who's a go-getter, and Tolbert fits that role. And he's also a guy that's going to be a hard worker, coming out of a school, very lightly recruited. South Alabama is not a top-tier school name. And so for him to be able to have that kind of mold and that effect, it really will provide an opportunity for Zach Wilson to find himself an ability to go further. And, there are stats here that are impressive, but the one thing, again, is that 16 deep ball receptions last year that were 5th most in college football. He's the guy you need. The Jets need a deep ball threat. Tolbert's that guy. It's a great pick for them here at 35. Is it a reach? Sure, but he would not, last until the 3rd round. It's a guarantee.
I don't think it's necessarily a reach here, Rick. I mean, you're talking about a guy who had 20-plus touchdowns and over 3,000 yards in 3 years. He's a solid producer. He's a big guy. And I think it would fit their system very well. And I think it's exactly what they're trying to do to protect Zach Wilson and have him take that 2nd-year leap. I think it's a great pick. Jurgen, you're muted.
This is all going swimmingly.
You can't blame that one on Xfinity.
No, I can't, but I can't blame it on the. I can't say on the 20 tabs I have open and trying to go in between all them. While not accidentally showing one on the screen as well. Give me a little bit of credit. We haven't screwed that up yet.
Of course.
So moving on from that. Yeah, right. The New York Football Giants are next. Some back and forth here. Giants are interesting now at this point because I think you've addressed the 2 main issues. So now from this point, it's really all about what else can you add to this team. I think a lot of people, because only recently I've heard people talk about maybe them adding secondary. Some people argue them potentially adding secondary with the 5th and 7th overall picks in regards to what they could do. I definitely see that as an option. And so I look at some of the guys in the secondary here. You have a couple of intriguing pieces here. Certainly some guys that could go later I think are highly talented. But for right now at this moment, I don't think, the secondary is one of those things that they could go after. Another one that is slowly becoming more interesting here is the wide receiver selection, just because of the fact that, if the rumors are true, Kadarius Toney does now want to leave, which is pretty wild to think about. That opens a need technically, and also because you really look at it, the Giants wide receiver core was just not good last season. It just wasn't. I'm pretty sure Jameson Williams had expensive, but not great. Yes. I'm pretty sure Jameson Williams had more receiving touchdowns last season than all the Giants wide receivers had, for the football team, for their team combined.
I got as many as Kenny Galladay.
Yeah. Oh, we all did. So I look at the wide receiver position there. I think you can go in a couple different places. And man, oh man, I'm not just making this pick just to add another weapon, but I'm adding him because yes, while back-to-back years you're taking a guy you may be a little bit concerned about with drops. This kid was a baller and a playmaker eventually, and he's a little bit of a taller guy. And if you need to replace Kenny Galladay, this isn't necessarily a box him out wide red zone threat per se. But I just think adding wide receiver wouldn't be a bad shout here. I'm going to go with Christian Watson out of North Dakota State for the Giants. I know it's not necessarily one of the top needs as it shows here, but I think for that team, especially with Daniel Jones, I think you just need to add weapons. And I don't think Christian Watson is a bad shout for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, again, the drops kind of threw me off with him because I know, but the thing is that about it too, Zach Wilson needs a stronger receiver that won't be susceptible to that. Daniel Jones has had that with Evan Ingram, so he's used to that, so he can kind of help that receiving core mold that. So I think it's a good shout for the Giants there for Watson at that pick. I really do. And I think, again, he could have gone in the Chiefs picks in 28 and 29, but the fact that he fell, it's good value as well. And that's the main thing. It's the good value at the end of the day.
All right, Rick, we got 3 picks here for you: Texans, Jets, and Chicago Bears. Let's get to it.
All right, Texans pick at 37. They need everybody, honestly. And this is a team that I think it's a team that is going to really start to really make things interesting. So I'm going to look down the line here, and I'm thinking for them at this pick because, they got their wide receiver in Drake London. They got their tackle in Evan Neal. Let's rebuild their defense a little bit. And let's go to the edge. Let's go to the edge, and let's go with Arnold Mbektie from Penn State. I think it's somebody that can really, really help them out on that edge, and he's a very strong quality pass rusher and can really help build that mold for them. Now, this is where I'm really going to reach.
Okay. What position? I just want to know the position first.
Linebacker.
Okay.
I talked about how I, as a GM, have fallen in love with certain guys, and in every simulation that I have done with this, Leo Chenal has been there at 38 for me from Wisconsin. However, there's a guy in that pick that might be a little bit better than Leo Chenal, I think. At number 38, give me Troy Anderson out of Montana State as a linebacker there. And I'll tell you why. He's a converted running back and quarterback who really is a strong athlete overall. And it's a very gifted athlete there. So I think it's a really good pick for them that can really help mold that. And yeah, is it high? Sure. But he is the guy that's been rising ever since the last few mock drafts have come out. I think he's a really strong player, somebody who will fit really, really well in the defensive scheme for the Jets there. And 39 for the Bears, their first pick. Look, the Bears are going to need somebody to really help out their offense. And while I'm not crazy about George Pickens because of the ACL tear, it's the same thing for me that Jameson Williams had. I think in this spot, it's too much to pass up. So the Bears take George Pickens at 39, and they get a wide receiver for Justin Fields to throw to in their scheme.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. And I also definitely think
internet indeed.
I think the offensive line could be an option, but I think the Bears. Hey, it was working for me, so I'm still here, boys. Don't worry.
Okay.
Although for how much longer?
You were talking to yourself. That's okay.
Oh, was I? Oh,
you were.
Lovely. Justin, you got back-to-back picks here. Let's keep on going before my internet just completely blows itself out. You got the Seattle Seahawks and back-to-back picks. We made the selection with the Seahawks at number 9 overall with Charles Cross. And now where do we go here? Could this be the territory where Seattle goes quarterback?
It certainly could be. There's a chance. I'm not usually a big believer in second-round quarterbacks. I feel like if a quarterback falls out of the first round, odds are if he's going to be worth your value, it's going to happen in the third round. I don't know how I came up with this, but it's just historically, I feel we haven't really found a lot of second-round quarterbacks that have been that guy. The first one I'm going to go with is Jalen Petrie out of Baylor. I think he is an excellent player. He had a great year last year playing for them. He's not the biggest guy on the field, but he's a starter. He's highly rated by Pro Football Focus, and he will bring a little bit of nastiness that I think that Baylor had on their team last year to Seattle that they haven't had in a cornerback in a long time. And then with their second pick, I'm gonna go with Leo Chanel, guy out of Wisconsin that Rick just mentioned. Excellent linebacker. He's 6'3", he's 250. He's a junior. He's a blitz heavy. He played well in a blitz heavy scheme. Seattle's always like to get after the guys. They play well in coverage, but I think a guy that can really get after that offensive line will help their secondary. I think Leo Chanel would be an excellent fit in Seattle.
Not bad at all. I think both those picks make sense. Just continuing to add to the defensive side of the ball here. You lost pieces on both ends. You just need to add to the talent. And I think the pick of Petrie as well, because he's another guy kind of like Hill that I made for the Bengals. Could be corner, could also play a little bit of safety. You got some defensive flexibility there. I think that's the number one thing when it comes to what Seattle needs to do here. So I got back-to-back picks here, really fast. But Justin, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that they're both guys that are versatile. The guys that can play a few different positions. I think you can convert if you don't think he's good in coverage. You can convert Chanel to that kind of outside linebacker, pass rusher kind of guy to get after the quarterback. He's got a lot of good pass rusher moves. He can go in the middle in sticky situations if you need the help. He's a solid player. I think the versatility is something that Seattle's going to need as their resources seem to be drying up on that team.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of resources and lacking them this year, the Indianapolis Colts, of course, lost their first-round pick in the Carson Wentz deal. They need to add to this team. The only 2 picks in this, so you got to be really smart here when it comes to it. I think with the Colts, the 2 team needs here are obvious: wide receiver and corner. They kind of address corner with getting Gilly Lock. I think you need to go after a wide receiver here per se. I look at the wide receivers here. I definitely believe for the most part that, had a Christian Watson or someone of that kin had fallen to this point, I definitely think that would have been the number one choices here. But now I think I look at it, it's kind of to an extent, pick your poison. A lot of different receivers there. I think the Colts, if you're going to stick with receiver, I think you just go with the guy here ultimately that best helps this team. And I think, and now you want to talk about reaches here, boys. I'm going to go with a little bit of reach here because I think the Colts need a guy in the slot that could be a slot specialist. And I'm going to go with a guy here. He is set to be the best pure slot receiver in this draft class. Out of the Pac-12, I'm going to go with Kyle Phillips out of UCLA. They need a guy in the slot. I think Pittman has proven he could be that guy outside. The other receivers on this team is just a question mark. I think if you could get a guy that has a role in this offense, plug him in right away, you go with that. Kyle Phillips to me at 42. Next selection I have here is the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons went with the quarterback early on. Definitely to some could have been an interesting pick. I think now you get to a point where if you're the Falcons, it could kind of get to, the opinion of BPA potentially. Now, I think I might be breaking someone's heart here with this pick, and if I do, I apologize. But this was almost my pick with 8th overall. They need to get younger, especially in the secondary. Their 2 starting safeties, from what I saw before, are extremely old. And I think they need youth. Jaquan Brisker, man, out of Penn State. I'm hearing a little bit more about him. I think he's really good. I think Atlanta needs to add a guy like that. It says corner, but I just think DB specifically in general. I think Brisker is most definitely a guy that Atlanta needs to take. So I'm going to pick good old buddy out of Penn State with that selection right there. Beautiful pick in my mind. Rick, I definitely think 2 surprising selections for you. So, of course, you have your trio of picks here before Justin has 1 or 2 of his own. One, actually, with Washington. But, keep it going.
How about this? This is the first Cleveland Browns pick of this draft. How surprising does that sound? That to me is a bit of a shock there. you look at what the Browns need, wide receiver, D-line, but they really need a lot of other things as well. I feel like, to me, at this point too, I think you're looking at, Deshaun Watson's got a lot of weapons, so give him someone on the defense that can help him out here. And I think this is where they're going to go on edge.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that at the Browns here, they're going to take Josh Pascal out of Kentucky at 44.
Ooh.
I think Josh Pascal's a really good athlete, and at 6'4", 278, he's a very strong leverage mindset. That's something that they need desperately. I think it's going to break Baltimore's heart a little bit, because you're going to see a guy that you want to go off, but then Baltimore's going to turn around and say, oh, hey, wait, look who's on the board. Drake Jackson at 45. Drake Jackson goes to Baltimore. That's another excellent athlete who's really going to fill a really good need for them at the D-line. And now's when it gets interesting. If you're the Minnesota Vikings, you drafted George Karlaftis, and you have a really good defensive end here. Now, this is where I'm going to go off the rails a little bit, so bear with me here for a second. I think the Kirk Cousins era is coming to an end. I really do. And I think this is where Minnesota makes a strong play for somebody. And note the word that I said, strong. Minnesota reaches for Carson Strong at 46.
Wow.
They bypass Desmond Ridder. They bypass Sam Howell. They want Carson Strong, who is as talented as they come, strong passer, really good with reading the routes. Is it a reach? Sure. But this is a team that's taking Christian Ponder at 12.
Fair.
It's a surprising quarterback pick, but it's a good pick for them. And I think Carson Strong will learn well under Cousins, and we'll see how he is in 2023.
What a pick. What a pick. Okay. I kind of knew who you were going to go with there. I knew you were going quarterback with how you were starting it, because we've had this discussion before. But going Carson Strong above Howell, Ridder, and Matt Corral as well.
Again, sometimes you just fall in love with the quarterback, and if that's what it is, that's the guy that's going to fit your system. And yeah, it's tough for Sam Howell, but his fall is going to continue because
I agree.
Yeah,
I think of the 5 to 6 main QBs. I think Sam Howell is probably going to end up being the last one selected out of all of them. I really do. Justin, I mean, Rick brings up a good point. You fall in love with a player, and quarterback tends to be the hardest. Like, I think some people have tried to argue against the QBs, saying that they're not good enough. But man, every single year teams will fall in love with a quarterback and they'll take him. And I think this year specifically, Carson Strong could end up being that guy that gets drafted higher than a lot of people would project. I would project that Strong as maybe a really good 3rd round pick for sure. A lock for the 3rd round, at least in my opinion, because I think 3rd round, you'll take the cheap contract and a guy to develop. Justin, you have a Washington pick here before we go back to Rick with Chicago. And then we're actually with you with New Orleans. A lot of Rick and Justin here. I'm just here. Well, I don't add to the looks department, so I don't even know why I'm here right now. So, gentlemen, continue. Justin, this is your pick.
So I know I did just say that you don't take a quarterback in the 2nd round. It's not a bad pick, Rick. I completely understand the love for Carson Strong. I think he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of potential.
Oh, I thought he was going quarterback.
Washington. So here's my thing. Washington only has 1 pick left in the first 3 rounds.
Right.
Do they go quarterback? They're not going to get another pick at a guy like Sam Howell. They're not going to get another chance at Desmond Ridder. They only have Carson Wentz there for 1 more year, albeit it will be an expensive year. So, with that being said, I still think they go linebacker and Quay Walker-Durg.
He teased us.
They have a need at linebacker. Quay Walker, he's an excellent linebacker last year. He played really well. He's one of the best run and hit linebackers in the class. I think that it's a major need in the center of that defense, and they did address the cornerback in the secondary. Now it's time to address that middle. Quay Walker is my pick.
I feel cheated. I feel cheated. We were set up there. We were riding the emotional high, and now we just get taken.
Jurgen, there's not enough chaos in your life right now. I'm bringing it.
Clearly not. You're right. My internet's been picture perfect the whole time. Rick, the Chicago pick. It's all yours.
Wow. I'm a little thrown, but that's okay. I mean, I could add more fuel to the fire and say the Bears want to go quarterback just to really blow things up, but that's not going to happen.
I don't see that happening.
Well,
Justin Fields. Wait. Justin Fields, meet your teammate Bailey Zappi. Yay! How about that? No. So Tyler Smith has still stayed on the board. This is where he ends up going because you need more offensive line for Justin Fields. And while Smith is a really good run blocker and his pass blocking is still in need of work, he's still a freak. He's still a very good athlete. And this is a really great value pick for Chicago to kind of rebuild their image. So I think having Tyler Smith go here where he's possible to go into the first round, having gone mid-second is a great look for them, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. And speaking of teams that maybe could go after some offensive line here, we mentioned them. Well, actually, no, he went after offensive line with the 19th overall pick. I almost forgot about good old Rain Man because he stole him from me, Justin. He would have been one of my picks. So we go with the Saints and Chiefs here, two of Justin's next selections. We start with the Saints at 49. Zuckman, Zucktails, as Rick likes to say.
Woo!
who we go with here at 49?
All right, so at 49, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take a quarterback. I don't think the Saints at this point, with this draft board ahead of them, pass up on a quarterback. I'm going to take Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. I think he's an excellent athlete. He's a winner, in my opinion. He was a 4-year starter. He's got a career, 90.7 grade according to Pro Football Focus in 2001, a career high. He's a guy for them at this point. After taking a tackle and arguably the top receiver in the draft, you take a guy like Desmond Ridder, give him the time to sit behind Jameis Winston, and see if you could turn him into something. You gotta take the chance with this kind of kid.
Well, I was going to say the perfect quarterback for him to learn under because he has so many experiences to share with this guy. Clearly, Andy Dalton. Continue.
Oh, obviously
at 60.
Yes, and it's true. So yeah, I would take Desmond Ridder at this point for the New Orleans Saints. And here, I think the Kansas City Chiefs get a steal, an absolute steal in Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. Smaller guy. He's a fast kid. He had an excellent year last year. He had over 1,000 yards. He had 12 touchdowns. He's played all over the field. They need another receiver. I do believe Mahomes might actually benefit from the loss of Tyreek Hill, just because there'll be more of the defense will have to be more honest. They can't just cut double Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, although I do still think they will double Travis Kelce. But with a wealth of talent at the receiver position now with this draft and Jahan Dotson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, they're going to have trouble covering those 4 receiver sets with these guys there. And I think Jahan Dotson is an excellent fit for that Kansas City team.
And the big thing with you doing that, you fix their defense with the first couple picks, and then you add a receiver still, because as we've talked about, the receiving class is deep, and they can, both of them, and really the Packers as well, can kind of afford to take a step back. Although I think Green Bay, it's so much pressure at this point, I think they have to go receiver. It almost feels like by law in the first round. But Kansas City has the leeway here to really take that step back, because they did add a couple guys. Unlike Green Bay, they haven't added anyone in the free agency pool, except for Sammy Watkins, who's good for the first 2 weeks of the season and not for the rest. Rick, could that be the case here? You went with defense. You went with the linebacking duo early with the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of people thought that maybe they could have a chance of being the most recent team to pick 3 straight, go 3 drafts in a row, picking a wide receiver in the first round. Last team to do that. Fun fact, Detroit Lions. Rick, 51 here, Philadelphia Eagles. Where are we going? Clearly, linebacker doesn't need to be a need anymore on that on the website, because we already have 2 of them.
So there were 2 different routes I was going with this pick. One of them was secondary, because I figured that the Eagles do need someone secondary. But Justin, you kind of tipped my hand a little bit here with this. And this is going to be a bit of a reach as well. But you want to talk about consistency? You want to talk about, a strong offensive lineman? How about a guy who was started ever since he was a freshman in 2019 and who could be a plug-and-play center if they need it? Eagles take Donovan West out of Arizona State at 51. He's a plug-and-play center. He played guard in 2020, but he's a guy that is consistently there, really has a great profile, very rarely allowed any sacks or hurries in that Arizona State offensive mindset. Fits a great need with Kelce. Like you said, 1 more year. This is a good guy to bring in to kind of fit that mold and really bring into the process.
I love that pick. Personally, I love that pick. When looking up some of these guys, he really jumped out, like you said, starting from his freshman year, Center is an important position, and he has that guard experience. So you could play him at the guard, give Kelsey that one more year, have him learn by osmosis from one of the best centers within the last decade or so, and then he takes over after a year or two. Like that, Rick, I think that's a beautiful pick. I think, Rick, you are picking just stunningly well for the Eagles, which you wanted to avoid the Giants picks to make sure you didn't get yelled at. I think you're still going to get yelled at for picking this good for the Eagles.
Oh, probably, yeah. But I mean, it all makes the most sense if you're the Eagles. I mean, it makes the most sense to fit those needs.
Justin, back-to-back picks here. Pittsburgh Steelers and Green Bay Packers, two storied franchises looking to get back to the Super Bowl or the Superb Owl. Who are we going with here for these two squads? We see there, it looks like quarterback there is a need for the Steelers. Are you going with another shock QB pick here?
That's a good observation, Jerk. No, I'm not. I'm going to go with Abraham Lucas for the Steelers at tackle. I think that they double down on their offensive line. Like I said, I don't necessarily think their quarterback prospect is in this draft. I think they keep their picks, maybe trade back to get some assets for next year and take a quarterback then when they have to trade up. But I'm going to go Abraham Lucas, revamp that offensive line, a guy that's only given up 4 sacks in 3 years, including 0 last year. It's a guy that steadily shown improvement, and their need is also at tackle on the offensive line. I think Abraham Lucas would be an excellent fit there for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And now for Green Bay. You've
Bay.
hit on a couple, like the top 2 needs it says there. You've hit on O-line, you've hit on receiver, I believe. Like this is just a spoiled riches at this point. This is depth here. So clearly you're going quarterback.
I didn't write down Olave for the Packers. Let me make sure that's filled in there. And now, the Packers with these moves, they have a lot of freedom to look around, and see, hey, what positions will fit the needs that I need. They did have a couple of concerns, I think, with the ball over the top. They could probably use a linebacker. I know Brian Asamoah is here. He's an excellent fit. I'm going to go with Boye Mafe out of Minnesota. Did I say his name right?
I believe so.
Boye Mafe. He's an excellent kid. I think the Packers really need to get their defensive numbers up. He's got a great pass rushing grade among edge defenders, and he's a kind of kid that can come in and he may not be a starter from day one, but he's got a lot of potential, and I think he's an excellent fit here for Green Bay.
I agree. They need to add pass rush, especially losing one half of the Smith brothers and Zadarius Smith. Good pick right there. What you've handled the needs, so now you go after just adding extra depth to this team. I think that's a big thing. Speaking of adding extra depth, New England Patriots shock playoffs last year to me. We have their first selection so far in this draft, which was a kid out of UConn. A UConn player went in the first round in football. It's in a basketball draft, ladies and gentlemen. Rick, continue the Bill Belichick tradition of random selections here. What kicker are we going with here? Give me something good.
It's not a kicker, Jurgen. I'm sorry. Not a punter either.
Long snapper?
I wish. No.
Yeah.
I hate, as a Jets fan, I hate that I'm doing this, but Tariq Woolen, Texas San Antonio. They need a lengthy corner, and they need somebody who's going to be a really strong member of their secondary. And it's 6'4", 205 with a 4.26 40-yard dash. He's a burner, and he's a freak cover guard. So it's a really strong personality to put in that secondary, and it helps them fit a need. Wide receiver would have been a reach. They would have been reaching for like a John Mechie, a wide receiver, I feel like, at this pick. But a corner, you can argue a Kyler Gordon from Washington would have been a possibility, but I think Tariq Woolen's size and length just makes him a much better athlete. And I would love him on the Jets. So picking him for the Patriots is like me, poisoning my own best recipe. But at the same time, it makes the most sense.
I'm only mad because I was looking at him for one of my later picks, and that's a really good one. Again, that's another pick. You just pick a guy off the board who may not go for another 20, 30. But I agree. I fell in love with this kid while looking at him over the draft. He's got the range. He's got the speed. Like UTSA, like low-key, some pretty good players recently. It took him a little bit of time, but now Marcus Davenport's becoming really good for the Saints. Like,
yep.
he's a big piece of that pass rush now. I love it personally, so that was a great pick, Rick.
And I don't believe I pick again until 68, so I'm just going to sit back and mute my microphone and eat my chips and just watch you guys go at it.
Yeah, I'm muting that mic if you start making those chips. Oh, okay, you've muted your mic. Perfect. All right, Justin, it's you and me running the show right now, so let's get to it. I got 4 picks here. I'm going to try to be as efficient as can be. The Arizona Cardinals, I went with defense with Jermaine Johnson with an earlier selection. I think the way to go here now is easily to go after the offensive line. guard and center is the number one thing. I look at a couple guys here. It may end up being a reach, quote unquote, but Dylan Parham is a guy that I've kind of, looked at. I think he's one of those guards that can definitely be taken in this range and it wouldn't be an issue. They just need to add to that offensive line. You saw Kyler, like there's a difference between healthy Kyler Murray and injured Kyler Murray. And you need to try your best to make sure Kyler is as healthy as can be at the end of the season, because that's the only way you're going to stop Cliff Kingsbury teams from falling off. So I'm going to go with Dylan Parham with this pick for the Cards right here. Thank you very much. The Dallas Cowboys could go in a number of directions here. I went with Trevor Penning in the first round, so the offensive line has already been handled here. Now, what do you go? Obviously, it says defensive line and linebacker. I think for the most part, that is what ultimately makes sense for this team. And so let's just take a look at some of the options we have here in terms of really just adding edge rush. I think this team needs to add some talent here. You have to look at a guy that could really help you get after the quarterback. There's some really good options here. And you know what? I'm going to go with a guy he's just going to end up staying in the state. I'm going to actually go with DeMarvin Leal here for the team. I think he's got some really good raw physical tools. I think, him on that Dallas Cowboys team, he may not make the most immediate impact right away, but I think after a season, he could end up replacing Randy Gregory pretty easily. I just think adds to that pass rush, could be a strong option for that team. I think it's good. And he can stay in the state of Texas. Why not? Pick a guy. Pick a kid that's almost right in your backyard, essentially. So I think that's the way to go there. Buffalo Bills here, of course, I went with a bit of a shock pick with going wide receiver in the first round for them. And, I'm going to obviously deviate because I'm going to the other side of the ball. I'm going back to the edge rusher spot. A lot of different guys here. In the vein of what Rick did, I'm going to go with a little bit of surprise pick here. Cameron Thomas is actually a guy out of San Diego State. Looking a little bit about him, I think he could really be a surprise pick right away that could add to a defensive team. I think Buffalo Bills, their total defense was really good last season. They improved from the year before to, from 2020 to 2021. 2020, that team was god-awful in the running game. Remember, they almost lost to the Indianapolis Colts in the playoffs. I'm not saying that he's going to be there to just add to the run game, but I'm saying just add to that defensive line, add depth. I think Cameron Thomas would be an excellent selection there. And now the Atlanta Falcons, they're once again back on the clock. I think there's a lot of different ways that you could go with this team. So many different selections. It's not listed as a need, but at the same time, wide receiver is at least interesting to me.
How interesting, Jurg?
He's
because if you just look on paper, this is what I cut off again, really?
Yeah.
Beautiful. But you hear me now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. This is becoming a absolute, just beautiful show with each coming day. I'm going to go with a guy who he could add. You got to replace Devin Hester. You gotta bring back the return ability of Devin Hester, and you also just a guy who could be a long bomb. Marcus Mariota could get some deep shots to this kid. I've seen him. I've fallen in love with his return ability. Maybe he could be a weapon for you offensively. If the Ravens can make Hollywood Brown work, I think that the Atlanta Falcons can make Calvin Austin III out of Memphis work here. Boom. Because again, even though it doesn't say wide receiver, really they only have Kyle Pitts as a receiving option for the quarterback. You need another guy there. Give me Calvin Austin. I think he could be a really good pick in the second, third round. And again, just a boost up in the special teams would be an amazing returner. I think a couple of teams here coming up would have loved the Calvin Austin just of what he could do, to really electrify the team. But hey, you don't get him. Now back-to-back picks here for two teams. Once again, looking for a Super Bowl. Former NFC Championship game match from a couple years ago. Here, Justin, picking for two opponents here: the Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Absolutely, and here's where I think things get a little spicy for the Packers. We talked about depth. We talked about, getting them the right players. And I think that they're going to go again with another receiver here to build that depth for Aaron Rodgers. They only have really two viable starters, in my opinion, in Sammy Watkins, which is questionable, and Olave, who they took in the first round. I think they go John Mechie III here with a little bit of a reach. I think he's an excellent fit for what they're trying to do. When he's healthy, he's a burner down the field. It's what they really wanted in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and it never really panned out. I think Mechie would be an excellent fit for Aaron Rodgers, who's always trying to throw that ball deep whenever he can.
Fair enough. again, because of the picks that the Chiefs and the Packers have, multiple receivers for sure an option, especially now at this point when receivers, you really got to trust your scouting department here on some of these guys. And actually, funny enough, before we got started here, Rick and me were talking about Michi, and he mentioned Michi before with the Patriots pick. Not really a guy he wanted to end up taking there. Who knows? He could become something. Again, with a rookie wide receiver, you're sending them to a team with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That gives them a boost right away. You're not trying to develop them with a bad QB like Michi. Aaron Rodgers, it helps. Yes, there's some pressure because you got to perform, but having Aaron Rodgers there with you helps a lot.
Sure. And I think that, again, if this kid could stay healthy, that's an excellent fit for him. He could be there, a burner for the rest of Aaron Rodgers' career, for really him to open up the field, because it's an issue that they've had. They can send Olave to do everything they need. They can have Sammy Watkins coming up over the middle as a pure route runner type of guy. And all of a sudden, this revamped Packers offense is looking a lot nastier than it was looking a couple weeks ago. And now for Tampa Bay, I have them looking around. A lot of people are saying that they need offensive line help. They did re-sign their center. They got some guards. I think maybe they could use a tackle. That's not where I'm going here. Where I'm going for them is a guy that 3 or 4 weeks ago, he was being talked about as a top 25 pick. And if it weren't for an Achilles injury in his pro day, he would be, one of the first round guys going out there. I'm talking about David Ojabo out of Michigan. I think he's an excellent fit. Again, they need that defensive line to get a little younger. I think that they go the same route as the other Florida team who went Hutchinson and Davis. I got them going Michigan and Georgia again, just flipped. They're going to go the Michigan, the Michigan guy second, and with David Ojabo.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Ojabo, big hit. He definitely would have been a first round pick. Almost certainly someone I actually think, Justin, very much low key, but I think the Kansas City Chiefs would have been an interesting team had you had him last till there. I think KC could be a team that may be willing to take Ojabo with one of their second round picks there, especially at 62, because the Chiefs need to get a little bit younger and a little bit cheaper in the pass rush as well. Maybe you still go for pass rusher there ultimately with KC. A little bit of funny thing, we talked about the former NFC Championship game matchup. Let's talk about a former Super Bowl matchup, back-to-back picks. I have the 49ers pick. Justin has the Kansas City Chiefs pick. And then right after is the Bengals pick. AFC Championship game matchup. Real contenders now at this point late in the second round. I'm not going to waste any more time. The San Francisco 49ers, they need to add a little bit more to that defense. They need to add to the cornerback position. I know there's concerns about Debo being gone. I think Kyle Shanahan can work around that. I think you need to add corner. I'm going to go with Roger McCreary here out of Auburn. I think just ultimately you need to go with who you potentially think could really help make an impact. I think McCreary, you really look at the San Francisco 49ers secondary the last, however many years, you don't necessarily need a guy who's eye-popping. You just need a guy who's going to play his role, good in coverage, some man-to-man. I think McCreary is essentially going to be that. He's going to play his role in that system. He's going to help stop receivers. I think McCreary, he's not going to get a lot of receptions, I don't think, but I think he's going to be a nice stabilizing force and youth in that secondary that they definitely need.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick.
Justin, the Chiefs here at 62. You could go with a lot of different players. You have handled so many of their needs at this point. You could kind of take your time, technically speaking. And I think the Chiefs will take their time here in real life if they don't trade this pick.
So the Chiefs are obviously, they're a great team. They got to be considered in the top of the AFC at any chance, at any turn you make, until they prove otherwise. But like I said, this was a rough year for them. They lost a lot of pieces. They have a lot of needs, a lot more than Pro Football Focus is giving them credit for. And I think one of those needs is a bruising running back. I think the Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing wasn't exactly what they thought it was going to be. He got troubled down in the red zone. He's not a tackle breaker. And I think that the Chiefs go with Breece Hall here out of Iowa State. He's a bruising guy. He had 20 touchdowns last year. He can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. I think he's an excellent change of pace back to go with. What are you doing?
And potential sponsor,
Breece Halls. I think he would really bring a punishing side to that Chiefs defense that they haven't had in a very long time.
Agreed. Honestly, didn't see that coming there. Just straight up honest. I don't not to say it's a bad pick at all. The first running back of this draft class goes at 62. Wouldn't have imagined that, in most cases, especially the last couple of years. There have been some pretty good running backs, but I think this makes sense. It's a very good pick right here, the perfect deviation of skill sets. And I think that's the biggest thing here. You need to deviate the skill sets that you ultimately have. I think this is a great pick here by Justin with Hall. Cincinnati Bengals. I'm with you, Justin. You want to talk about a team that has a few more needs that I think meets the eye. I think the Cincinnati Bengals are there. I don't just think it's between guard and center, but I actually am going to go with offensive line here because the opportunity arises here for them to go after the interior. I think the tackle positions are set, ultimately speaking, in regards to you have Lyle Collins and Jonah Williams at left and right tackle. I think that's great. Kappa is a great guard selection. The other guard spot in the center position are looking a little bit scary here. I think you need to look at what's available in the interior. You have to go with a couple of guys here. Some interesting, pieces here. First off, Kentucky in general. Let's give Kentucky props. They're sending guys to the draft. Luke Fortner, I think, would definitely be a option here. But ultimately, I think it comes down to one of these two guys. And come on now. Y'all know what my name is. I'm not passing up the opportunity to pick someone with my name. Granted, it's his last name. But Cam Jurgens, this center out of Nebraska, picking a young center here out of the Big Ten. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. They need youth. They need another center. Ted Karras is the other offensive lineman veteran they signed. He could play guard. I think he could play a little bit of center. But ultimately, they need to bring another youthful player in there to that offensive line. He may not play right away, but Cam Jurgens, he's got the name for it. He's going to be a very strong center. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. But in all seriousness, though, he was a very good starter at Nebraska. Big Ten, I think, is one of those conferences you really look at the offensive linemen because the defensive lineman that conference has produced. Like if you're an offensive lineman with a good pass block win rate, solidifying an offensive line out of that conference with some of the talent that's been out there, you're good. Cam Jurgens, still stabilizing force. I think it's a great selection right there.
Absolutely, I agree with you. If
the
opportunity arises for you to take a guy that has the same name as Jurgen, you really can't pass up that opportunity. No, they protect Joe Burrow.
You can pass up on it, but the question is, do you want to pass up on it?
No, protect Joe Burrow, protect Joe Burrow, protect Joe Burrow, protect Joe Burrow, and protect Joe Burrow are their top 5 needs this offseason.
I thought you were going to say protect Justin Herbert because of the little mismatching you were doing last week with their names.
Oh my God. I'm trying to avoid. I just blocked that week at him. I didn't remember a single person's name last week. I don't know what was wrong with me, but
it's a long day.
It's something, I'll tell you.
By the way, real fast, we are about to get in the third round here. Justin, take us in. You got the Broncos at 64 and the Jags at 65, my man.
Well, this is the first pick the Broncos have in this draft, and I think that it's important that they go after someone that can rush the passer. They did pick up Randy Gregory, I believe it was, from the Cowboys this offseason, and I think that they need to pair him up with someone. They go Nick Bonito here, a guy that's fallen out of Oklahoma State. Oklahoma Sooners. I think he's an excellent pass rusher. He's going to be a pure pass rusher. He doesn't really do a lot else. That's why he's fallen to this point, I believe. But Nick Bonito will be an excellent force for a team that was, had a strong defense last year, but was lacking a little bit of pass rush.
Very, very much agreed. And you pick a defensive lineman here. Are we going to go for a trifecta of defensive linemen here with the Jacksonville Jaguars? You've picked 2 for them so far. But if I'm going to take a guess here, Justin, I got to think you're going offensive line here. You got to protect. You just went in to protect Joe Burrow, protect Joe Burrow, protect Joe Burrow. You got to protect Trevor Lawrence now. I think if you're Jacksonville, but that's just my opinion. You have the selection here.
Absolutely, I absolutely think they need to protect Trevor Lawrence.
I got him. I did that on purpose. I got him.
Football is started in the trenches, and it's a major need for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think, even though they did address it, Cam Robinson is now only on a 1-year deal. If they can't sign him to an extension, that's a major issue. And with that, I am going to have the Jacksonville Jaguars really address a need in linebacker with Brian Asamoah, the Oklahoma linebacker that's fallen.
He'll be here all week.
Lost Miles Jack. They just lost Miles Jack. They're really going to need to have someone replace him in the center of that defense, the redshirt junior. He's a young kid. He's a little small, but he's fast. He moves sideline to sideline. He's everything that they need in a linebacker today. So I'm going to have the Jaguars take Brian Asamoah. out of Oklahoma.
That was a good pick. That was a good pick and a good troll as well. I went to the offensive tackle spot right there. I love you and hate you at the same time right now, Justin. You're the best. Moving on now, back-to-back picks for me. Before we get back to Rick, in and of itself, I think the highlight of this draft is just going to be what Rick does in the background while we end up making our selections, ultimately speaking. But let's get
Rick's
to
still
it.
here?
Shockingly, yes. He's not.
I'm moving on to the Happy Hopper gummy bears now.
He's not sick of us. Let's go to the Detroit Lions here. Ultimately, this to me is an interesting pick because I think Detroit, you've handled a lot of needs to this point in the draft with some of the selections that you've made. And I think with that, it gives you some flexibility. We've gone after wide receiver with them. We've gone at the defensive line. I think, and also defensive back. So I think now is finally the time. You've made the picks. You can go after a quarterback here. Not saying this is going to be the guy of the future, but I think you could potentially go after a QB here to be someone let's just see, and you give him a couple games as a tryout, and we'll be competing with the guy that you ultimately bring in the future. And so with all of that, obviously, I'm going to go with one of these guys over here. No. I'm going to pick Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. I think Matt Corral, I think, is kind of been underrated. I think for the guys, I definitely agree that Willis Pickett and Ritter are in front of him, but I think Matt Corral should be the fourth guy, and a little bit of competition there with Ritter at 3. Amazing in run pass option in RPO offenses. I think very underrated in terms of his ability to just throw the football. I think he really showed some glimpses at Ole Miss. Had a couple rough games here and there, of course, but that's just the SEC. Like, it's eat or be eaten, and sometimes in that conference, it happens to the best of them. But I think ultimately it is just a good thing for the Lions to just get a young QB there to kind of challenge Jared Goff and also just give a guy a tryout at the end of the season. I think a good 4 or 5 game tryout for one of these guys is worth it. I think Matt Corral could do a lot in those 4 or 5 games. Moving on to the New York Football Giants. Oh, how I'm tempted to just for the heck of it pick Sam Howell for them because they just need another quarterback. And another quarterback out of the ACC.
I'd enjoy that immensely.
I think we all would, honestly. The Giants, again, you could go in a couple different ways here, but I want to try to look at linebacker here, and they needed a linebacker for a while. A couple interesting selections here to me in what you could do. I think what they're going to go for, this may not be the great pick, but I think they just need a guy who's made an impact in college who can just be a defensive leader. And I'm going to go with, out of Wyoming, Chad Muma.
Damn it!
My God, I've done it again.
I cannot wait to see the video of the Jets pick at 10 when you do that exact same thing.
Oh my God. The Giants have needed linebacker help for so long. I think they need a guy who has been there, done that, leader, communicator, everything that you want for it to be in a linebacker. I think Chad Muma can be for a 3rd round pick as well. Like, we talked about the higher up linebackers in this draft, and obviously Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd are amazing, but you want guys for value here. I think he's the guy at 67. Rick, the next 2 picks, but 3 of the next 4 picks actually might even be, no, 3 of the next 4 picks belong to you. Texans and Jets, of course, upcoming. I have a feeling I just took Muma. Muma is on the wrong New York team according to my selection.
Yes, he is, because the Giants already have a high tackle linebacker in Blake Martinez like that. So it's adding, it's putting a hat on a hat basically. Okay, well, I'm gonna get. Actually, you know what? I have a good feeling about this. Okay, 68, the Texans. They need an upgrade at a lot of positions, but one of the upgrades that they need is at a position where they have as their number 1 Brevin Jordan. I'm talking about the tight end spot, and this is where I think Trey McBride of Colorado State goes to Houston. He is a phenomenal pass catcher, great route runner, but can also help out with their run game a lot. They just signed Marlon Mack, so he's the dominant player, and he's the class of the tight end class, I think, for this team, this group. So I think he's a good fit over there with the Texans at 68. I would have had the Jets take him at 69, but, Uzama and Conklin went there, so that was something that I thought of. So this is where I had Muma go into the Jets at 69 because it was just such a good fit. Oh man, this is just bad. This is just
Well,
really, really
well, if
bad.
we
Well,
momentarily just take a look here, very briefly, just to see what linebackers could be there. Channing Tindall, I think, is a guy that a lot of people underrated at Georgia. I want to say, is there another Georgia linebacker on the board? No, so Tindall is the guy I'm thinking of. I think a lot of people underrate what he was able to do in that defense. Brendan Smith out of Penn State wouldn't be a bad shot. I mean, there's also this guy over here, Rick. Just he's available.
I'm not paying attention to you. I am not paying attention to you. It's not happening. Okay, look. So I'm gonna reach. I'm gonna reach again
What
because
position?
I think
I want to know.
we're gonna go wide receiver.
Oh,
And here's the thing that I'm thinking about in my head. I'm thinking about, when Drew Brees had his phenomenal years in college at Purdue, he had a phenomenal wide receiver there named Taylor Stubberfield. And Stubberfield didn't really pan out as a great pro, but he's a great pass catcher as well. I think you've got a great situation there with David Bell in the same way, too. David Bell was a prolific pass catcher in college. And yeah, his 40 time might scare you, but at the same time, he's a guy that I didn't say I was going to draft him yet, Jurgen, but thanks for that.
I mean, you mentioned Purdue.
I mean, of course, I'm picking him. But thanks, man. You're ruining the flow of the whole thing. The thing is that Bell, almost 3,000 yards in his college career, almost 300 catches. The guy knows where to find the ball, and that's what Zach Wilson needs: somebody to find the ball in a spot where he can get to it. So I think for him, it's a good fit, and it's a reach because you've got a lot of guys that are ahead of him who could probably go higher. But I think it's a good need. I think it's somebody that Zach Wilson's going to keep looking to. So we've rebuilt this wide receiver core with Jalen Tolbert and David Bell. You've gotten good depth and good value too, where if they don't pan out, you get Jackson Smith and Jigba next year to add to that core, and you have 3 young, hungry wide receivers there to replace your Corey Davises. I think it's a good fit.
Agreed. And it's just about adding talent, I think, for some of these teams at this point. Just bringing young talent that can compete. Speaking of bringing in more young talent, Justin, let's go to the Jags. I'm not even going to assume the position because that burned me once. Let's see who you go with here.
Jared, you can assume the position to this time because
you're
going to be right. You're going to be right. I'm going to go with Zach Tom, the tackle out of Wake Forest. He was the top pass blocking guy in the FBS last year. It's someone that I think, again, if Cam Robinson leaves next year, they're going to be stuck. You need to protect Trevor Lawrence. You need to protect him long term. There are 2 tackle positions, so we'll see which side they end up playing him on. But I think Zach Tom would be an excellent fit. They addressed the defense heavy in the first 3 picks. And now with 4th, I think Zach Tom is the right guy to go with in this situation.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Rick, Chicago Bears here. This is the last pick for the Bears in this 3-round mock. So 2 picks in the second, 1 in the third. You've added some talent so far. Where are we going with here? Are we going to keep adding to the offense, or are we going defense here?
We're going to add to the offense here. And I think we're going to add to the offense in an out of left field sort of way. But I think it makes the most sense for them because of who they currently have and the injury needs that are questionable in that regard. You don't have to go very far, Jurgen. You can stay on that page. Kenneth Walker III goes to the Bears. I think because David Montgomery's injury history is really questionable, and you need a really stronger running back who can be a bruiser, who can take the contact and keep going. And I think for the Bears, it's a good pick for them, and it's a good pick for Walker. He gets to stay pretty local, and he's a really strong, no-nonsense running back, one of the best players in college. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of throw him into that mold and give him an opportunity to help rebuild that offensive output.
It's a great pick, Rick.
Oh, yeah. And Chicago's always been known for running games.
Yeah. Absolutely. I strongly considered him over Breece Hall, but, I went with the production in the passing game and the few extra touchdowns. But I really love Kenneth Walker.
Yeah. Agreed. Justin, Seattle. I mean, hey, maybe you could go running back here.
Yeah. It's something I think they need. I mean, I don't think that they really need a running back. The running backs are not very high up on the board at the moment, so it would be a reach. But it's something that Seattle is definitely going to have to consider, I think, at this point in the draft. So with that being said, I'm gonna take a real chance here and go with Sam Howell out of North Carolina. I think he's the best quarterback left on the board. And at this point, it's the last pick in this mock. It doesn't hurt to just take a flyer on a quarterback that had some promising stats in his last year in college. I think Sam Howell is the way they go.
I don't blame it at all. Howell, He goes. So now we've had, I believe that's all 6 quarterbacks now have gone officially in our mock so far. And it happens in the first 72 picks. That'll be something interesting to see come the real draft in and of itself. 2 picks here. I was almost about to say 2 first-round picks here, but no, 2 picks here, back to back between the Colts and the Falcons. Colts, like I mentioned earlier, taking Kyle Phillips from UCLA with that first pick that we had for them. Need a strong slot receiver. Now this is where they definitely go corner to address the other need. Got a little bit weaker at the cornerback position with trading away I believe it was Rakisin in that deal to get old buddy Yannick Ngakoue. So now what do you take here? I think so, a couple interesting guys here. Ultimately, though, I think for the Colts, while a more established guy like a Kyler Gordon would be nice, I'm going to go with a bit of I think this is going to be a reach. But again, when you have such low picks, you kind of have to see if you could get some upside. I think a guy that's on the board right now, he had a couple interceptions last year. It was, I believe, his first year fully starting for this team in the SEC. But I'm going to go with Jalen Armour Davis out of Alabama. The kid, to me, it was his first year starting. He caught a couple interceptions, some pass deflections, a forced fumble, I believe. Very raw. Again, raw.
Not where I thought it was going to go.
But I think if you're the Indianapolis Colts here, you got what? Not where you thought he was going to go.
No, I thought you were going to go with a different corner there, actually. But yeah, it's a solid option for them.
I just think I think with such a limited draft capital, you need to go with a guy here that I know this first year may not be strong, but you develop him. I think he could be great, and I think it's a guy who in a couple of years maybe could end making some plays in the Indianapolis Colts secondary. Now to another team that just needs something. The Atlanta Falcons here. You could kind of go in a couple of different places with this team overall, and just it says it all. They need talent, but we've gone after quarterback for them. We've gone after wide receiver, I believe. We've added a wide receiver to the score. We've gone after DB, if I'm not mistaken. So really, it's kind of a take your pick in regards to what they could do. It says that they do need some interior offense here. I think this person just where I'm going to go with Cole Strange out of Chattanooga. And the selection is good. Cole Strange, I think, to me is a solid player. I think he's going to end up being a 3rd-round pick. I think he's going to be an absolute great get in the 3rd round for a team here. I think he's probably going to go in one of the selections you guys we're going to end up having here in a little bit. And I think ultimately it's just a way to go with this selection. And Atlanta, they need youth. They need to get younger. Need guys. Cole Strange, I think, could be a good fixture on that offensive line.
Absolutely. I like the pick there, Jurg.
Denver Broncos, Justin. Let's see. I think I'm going to like I think I'm going to like this pick here because I have a very sneaking suspicion where I think you're going to go here.
So with teams that don't have a lot of draft picks, I think that it's imperative that they get the max value for what they have. And you got to look at guys that are supposed to have been taken at this point, high upside guys that, have fallen to you. And there's one guy that fits the need according to Pro Football Focus, and I think would be an excellent fit there, and that's Kyler Gordon out of Washington. He had a good year last year. He's got 2 interceptions. He's a guy that started off a little slow in his career at Washington, but he's really picked it up. His passer rating last year was only a 47.3, which is solid. He's an excellent depth signing, I think, for them, and has a potential to really turn into a starter there in Denver.
Oh, agreed. And I think it's a great secondary he's going to. There's some veterans there he's going to learn under. Could end up making a couple plays here and there early on in his career. Playing time might be a bit of an issue, but I think like you talk about a place where the kid can marinate for a year at least and become really good. I think that's not a bad pick at all. I think Denver, because they lost some picks with the Russell Wilson deal, I think it's a great selection right there. It's about to become the Rick show here because I believe he has 5 picks in a row of what he's going with here.
Yeah,
Ravens.
I think so.
5 picks. Rick, take it away.
So Sam Howell would have gone here to Baltimore, I think, if he had stayed on the board, because I don't like the idea of Tyler Huntley being the only backup. I don't think he's proven enough. So that leads me to a question then. Do I dare hit the red button and pull complete chaos on this whole merger? Or do I stay kind of neutral and really just go in my mindset here? And you know what? Baltimore, they improved with Trent McDuffie and Drake Jackson. You could make an argument they could go for a Nick Cross out of Maryland here. I think that would be a really good safety for them. He's a Blazer. And that's where I'm going to go, Nick Cross out of Maryland. I'm going to go for that. Yeah. I thought really long and hard about taking the quarterback there at 76, but I just don't see it. I just don't see the Ravens. They're not that team that reaches for a quarterback of that regard, that's that lowly rated, that high up. I mean, Bowler and Flacco are one thing, but Bailey Zappi wouldn't have made sense there at 76. 77 with the Vikings. I think along the same lines that you were saying with Cole Strange. I think this is where Luke Fortner of Kentucky falls to Minnesota. So here's the thing. The real question is, where is JC Treader go? That's the real question, because that can kind of divvy up what the selection is. You know, if Treader doesn't go to Minnesota or Cincinnati, they want to go young. But I feel like that makes the most sense for them to go for a guy like Luke Fortner in that regard. He's a bruiser. He's a very good pedigree, burly center, and very consistent on that offensive line. I think that's what you need. You need to build up, especially if you're going to have a new quarterback in there in a couple of years. It makes sense for them. 78 with the Browns. Give me Kingsley Enagbare from South Carolina. Yep. It's your time, Jurg. It's your time to have your heart broken. It just, at this point for Cleveland, it just makes the most sense to have them kind of being the team that's just, drafting what makes the most sense. And I think this is it. Kingsley Enagbare is a really talented player who fits a good need on that defensive line, and it just works for them. I think it's just a simple fit that can really fit in really nicely with like a Myles Garrett and that whole crew over there. So I think it's a good option for them. So I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is.
I was looking at it with my Falcons pick, just full disclosure. I think like it would have been a nice pick, but not a bad one either by the Browns. Like if he gets playing time early, he's going to be next to Myles Garrett. Like, oof, you get a couple sacks early. Oof.
Yeah. Now for the Chargers at 79, I'm just going through what I'm looking at, what I did for the Chargers in the past, because it's been a while since we've called their name. It was just Garrett Wilson, I believe. They haven't had another pick.
Yeah.
So they need to shore up. And this is where I think, they missed out on Bernhard Raimann. This is where they get his buddy, Luke Gadecki from Central Michigan at 79. Another good option for them that can really help just muscle up that option there to be able to provide for for Justin Herbert. And lastly, the Texans at 80. This is an interesting choice here, because this is a team that, as we mentioned before, needs a lot of different things. And I think this is where they want to go a little different. This is where they want to go for something that's a little bit kind of, trench-worthy. Give me the highest graded tackle in all of college football in 2021. Give me Max Mitchell out of Louisiana Lafayette to pair with them. I think this is an opportunity for the Texans to really rebuild that line, to give Davis Mills more of an opportunity to provide. If they're not going to win a lot of games, at least you have a strong seasoned line to bring in a quarterback who can then develop behind a really strong line. So I think it's a really good fit for them. I think it's something that's an off-the-board, underrated pick, but I think it really works.
No, I love the pick. Just another guy I wanted to snag up. Dang, that honestly, that immediately became my next backup for the Falcons pick, and now I don't have any options there, so I'm going to kill a little bit of time here. So let's start here with the New York Football Giants. I did not pick a tight end yet. There are a couple tight ends here. I'm just going to go with the highest rated one here. That is Greg Dulcich from UCLA. I love the UCLA receiving options. What can I say? But I also think he's pretty good at helping to block a little bit. But they need it. They just need something after what happened with Evan Ingram. So getting a new tight end there, not using a first rounder on him either, using a third rounder, I don't think is necessarily a bad pick at all. Now the Atlanta Falcons, again, this team, it's really just, you look around the board. I think if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you just go with a guy that you just look at and be like, boom, that's my guy. That's who I want to go with. It's a little bit, I'm going to go offensive line again here. And I think this guy, he's fallen down the board. I think he could be a good pick. He's not going to start immediately because the tackle position is set, but I'm going to go with Darian Kennard out of Kentucky. Kentucky is just producing these kids. It's absolutely amazing. But I'm just going to go with him. I think you talk about, I've already said in terms of adding youth to this team, I think offensive tackle is definitely going to be a position that they could look at aside from just the interior of the line. I mentioned Alex Mack before is getting old, but both of their offensive tackles as well. I think it just makes sense. Philadelphia Eagles, we go to back to Rick.
Could you imagine a scenario in which Philadelphia not only shores up their linebacking core, but adds a second tight end option that's a monster to their offense? Because I have them taking Jelani Woods out of Virginia here at 83. He's 6'7". He's a massive force of nature, and he's a guy that is going to produce. Now, he's developing as a receiver, sure, but he's a strong blocker as well. And for an Eagles team that's got Miles Sanders and Boston Scott in the running back position, you need a good run blocker. So having Woods there as another option with Dallas Goedert really helps shore that up. I think it's a really solid pick at 83.
I agree. I agree. And, we're talking about shoring things up. Justin so far has gone with offensive line, his first couple picks with the Steelers. Does he go 3 for 3, or does he go after a different position here? We know it's not going to be quarterback.
No, at this point, there's not much here in terms of quarterback for them at this point. There's a few guys that I was looking at, but I think that they really need to address that defensive line. They had great sack numbers last year, but they were also pretty far down in terms of run defense. I think they go interior. I think they go Perrion Winfrey. Not the best run stuffer that was in the draft. They did pass up on a few, but he's a guy that gets after the quarterback. He'll address, they'll work with him as a big guy to address some of those run stuffing abilities, and it'll add to that pass rush that was so feared last year, which is how they like to defend. They like to get that ball out of the quarterback's hands quick and force him to make mistakes for that highly touted secondary. I think Perrion Winfrey is where they go.
Some pretty good pieces on that defensive line, too, so I don't think a lot of pressure for the rookie coming in as well. I mean, he's not there to pass rush. He's there to try to help in the run. I mean, pass rushing, let's be real here, it's already handled on the Steelers. Rick, you got back-to-back picks here before it becomes the J&J show between me and Justin. So let's see, what are you doing here with the Pats and the Raiders?
2 reaches, 2 surprises. Okay. The Patriots are going to pick a guy who's going to stay with their team for a bunch of years. He's not a name that you're going to know until it's too late, because he's a guy who is drafting as a halfback, but he's got a very good decisive running style and very NFL translatable game, I think. Give me Tyler Allgeier out of BYU going to the Patriots at 85. He's a guy who ran for 1,600 yards last year. He's a very strong, no-nonsense back who can catch the ball well, too. He only, out of 32 targets, he had 28 catches. So that's pretty impressive. That's another swing back like a James White mold. That's pretty impressive for them. I think it's a good option for them in that regard. At 86, the Raiders are going to throw a little bit of chaos into the mold, I want to say.
We like it.
So if you're Las Vegas, you're looking at Derek Carr, you're looking at Nick Mullins, you're looking at Bailey Zappi, and you're going to say to yourself, no, I instead am going to take a tackle because they need offensive line help. Give me, for the Raiders at 86, Braxton Jones out of Southern Utah. It's another guy that I fell in love with when I was watching this whole thing. He has a great wingspan for a 6'5" guy, and he's very quick, but he's very under-recruited and underrated because he went to Southern Utah. So that's a Division I AA WAC school. They played Idaho. That's all you really need to know. But he's a guy that, given the right opportunity, will flourish. And so I think it's a great spot for him at 86 to be in front of Derek Carr to kind of protect his blind side and help him out in that regard. So goes from there.
Not bad at all. I think 2 very, very fundamentally sound selections here. That's one of the reasons why we value Rick so much on the show. Like he's good. He finds the gems, and I think some of the guys that he's found here, Justin, especially with the Patriots picks, but this Raiders pick as well, because I think a lot of people weren't expecting Alex Leatherwood for their first rounder a while back. I think he's pretty good, and now you bookend the tackle positions here with 2 guys that not a lot of people had expectations of. I think great. 4 picks in a row here for me. I think just about the exact same order it was in the first round. So we're going to go really fast here. Arizona Cardinals, first and foremost, I think with this team, uh, you have to just look at what you've gained, what you've lost in the offseason. And I think if there is one thing that you lost this offseason, it was the ability to really get after the quarterback. And so I think you just have to get a guy that can help you in that endeavor. And again, I know I had them go pass rusher earlier, but I think more pass rushing would just be good for this team. And as we're about to learn very soon, when you end up paying your quarterback, you're going to have to sacrifice in certain places. And maybe part of the reason why they didn't keep Chandler Jones is because they know that Kyler Murray extension is coming. JJ Watt, let's be real here. His time is almost done. Not the worst idea in the world to get a defensive lineman to back him up a little bit there. That being said, yes, I am. I am staying here. Logan Hall. I tried to do what Justin did, but I couldn't do it just as well because I had set it up so much. So I'm just going to go with the defensive lineman, Logan Hall, out of Houston. Now, the Dallas Cowboys. Interesting position here for the Cowboys. A lot they point out linebacker here, and while I think linebacker is definitely a position for them, I also kind of have to consider corner here. And the reason why I'm considering corner here for the Cowboys is ultimately because I look at the idea that they're going to have to pay Trevon Diggs. And I just think you need to add a little bit more depth to that team in regards to the cornerback position. You still got a couple names here. I think the main name I'm going to go here for, if Diggs, we know Diggs is the coverage guy. He's going to get the interceptions. You need a guy that's just going to lay out people. And there's a guy right there who has a couple hard hits. He's going to be a good tackler. I'm going to go with Cam Taylor-Britt, the cornerback out of the University of Nebraska. Diggs is your playmaking corner. To me, Cam Taylor-Britt's that guy. He's not going to get all the attention, but he's going to be that fundamentally sound player. Give me him. Buffalo Bills, I think you could go in a number of different directions here. I may be, I think I might surprise some people here, but I'm actually going to go wide receiver again because I think the Buffalo Bills, I think we talked about the Packers need receiver depth, and I think we talked about the Chiefs need receiver depth. I think the Buffalo Bills want to add a little bit more receiver depth here, and I think they're just looking at the board here, and all these guys here could potentially be, options. I'm going to go with Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, personally. I think he's just going to be another guy there just to add to the team. Again, more weapons for Josh Allen. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing whatsoever. And I think Shakir would just be another dynamic fold to that team. And again, no pressure now because there was already a receiver selected ahead of you in this draft, and Stephon Diggs is there. You get, to me, if the Bills go after multiple receivers, the guy who gets selected second is going to have less pressure put on him. And I think that's going to be the number one thing. And then last but not least, the good old Tennessee Titans. I'm going to go with offensive tackle here. I am. I think that this team needs to continue to go after the fact that, Derrick Henry is their guy. They lost Jack Conklin a couple off seasons ago. I think they still need to focus in on the offensive line ultimately. And especially in that division, you got DeForest Buckner on the Indianapolis Colts. Actually, that's about it because the other teams are the Texans and the Jags. But as it may, just a guy to help, block a little bit. Nicholas Petit-Ferre out of Ohio State, I think is a guy that could have gone a little bit earlier. So I think at 90 is not too bad. I'm not saying he fell like precipitously like some of the other guys that we have had in this draft, but I think he's a guy that I think the Titans would very much value at that selection. Just another offensive lineman to help Derrick Henry and help Ryan Tannehill stand up there. And again, as contracts come up, you need these guys to potentially take up spots. And I think he could be a guy there for Tennessee. Justin, back to you, my man.
Thank you very much. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a team that, I am a little low on this year. They still are, a contender. Absolutely. They should absolutely win their division. But they had some holes last year, mainly in the secondary, in my opinion. And they did lose their starting safety in Jordan Whitehead to the Jets. I think they have to address that need now. I have them going Kirby Joseph, safety out of Illinois. He's a ball hawk. He's long arms. He's a big kid. And I think he could be their true center fielder going forward. And then now I have the envious pick of the Green Bay Packers. Here's another tough one because, like I said, we addressed a couple of needs. Do you go back to the wide receiver pool? Do you go after another edge rusher? They have some other needs, but I think, if they're really going to double down, they should go after Danny Gray from SMU. A big kid. He was fast. He had a blazing 4.33 time in the secondary at the combine. I think that his stats are a little low. I don't necessarily think he was utilized correctly in SMU, but I think this is a kid that can really develop into something, and it's worth the flyer for them to take Danny Gray in the 3rd round.
Not bad. I agree. I think that Justin, I think you've knocked the Packers' needs out so well. I think it gives you the opportunity here to just go wherever you want in regards to it. I think that's an amazing pick right there when it comes to Green Bay.
I think it gives them the opportunity to actually run the franchise. That might be a better option. Yeah, that's great.
Accurate. I think. Hey, Justin is making a very strong case here to be next man up there in Green Bay. And you know what, Justin?
I'll do it for a pay cut. Give me a call, Packers.
I'm behind you 100%, my man. Let us go to the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran, I had them going with corner earlier. I think personally, I know a lot of people are going to look at a couple of other positions. I'm just going to stick with the defensive side of things here. And I think this guy that I'm going to select right here may not see a lot of playing time right away, but because Eric Armstead, to me, I think like there's pressure on him to perform after the contract extension they give him. They need to develop a guy in waiting. I think there's a very talented edge rusher right here who could make some things happen. I got to go with Sam Williams out of Ole Miss here. I think that the potential of San Francisco to take him and develop him into being a really good pass rusher, I think is there. San Fran traditionally, they've done pretty good, even though he's not on the team anymore. He was maybe picked a little bit high. Solomon Thomas, I think, was overall a fine selection. Obviously not in the right pick per se, but I think just overall was a good enough player. You lost to Forrest Buckner a couple of years ago. You made up for that D tackle. They chose to pay Eric Armstead. I don't think he's long for San Francisco if he doesn't have a big season this year. So I got to go with some insurance there with Sam Williams.
I like it.
Justin, Kansas City. Again, Justin, I think we've all had teams that have had a good amount of selections in this draft. I think we've all done a pretty good job at it. I think Justin's done a fabulous job with the Chiefs and the Packers here. Where are you going? I believe this is the second to last Chiefs selection. Actually, there's one more after this, Justin.
I have one more. They do coming up late. I think, like I said, this is the most important draft I think the Chiefs have had in a number of years, possibly since that Mahomes draft. They have a lot of holes they have to fill, and I think one of those underrated holes was the offensive line. They had a lot of struggles. Patrick Mahomes he was making plays, but he was running for his life several times last year. So with that, I'm going to go with some versatility. I'm going to get a guy that played all 5 offensive line positions in his 3 years playing with Georgia. I'm going to pick Jamari Sailor out of Georgia, the tackle. I think he's an excellent player. He's got great hands. He's an excellent pass blocker. And I think that's really what they're going to need going forward. That gives them some depth. It gives them some, ability to move around. And I think that's really what the Chiefs really need to address next in this draft.
I like it. I really like that selection right there. Versatility, can play him anywhere. The Chiefs, I think a lot of people forget, even though they made the acquisitions last offseason for the offensive line, you still need to keep building the depth there because that Mahomes contract.
I don't necessarily think it worked out. They're older on the offensive line.
True.
I mean,
well, Joe Tooney and Orlando Brown, not necessarily bad.
Yeah, listen, I like Orlando Brown there, but I mean, as far as everyone else, it's a toss-up at this point. Anyone could lose their job any day in the NFL, and I think at the very least they need some depth just in case they have some injury concerns, and they really need to get Patrick Mahomes, let him sit in the pocket a little bit. I know he's great moving in a moving pocket, moving outside, but let's see what this kid could do if he doesn't have to run for his life. Like, he's got all the receivers now. We drafted him a solid, young, bruising running back. He's still got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I think is a great change of pace back in the NFL. If he had that bruiser with him, and Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the NFL that we've had, in the past few seasons. Let's see what he could do if he could protect the kid.
Agreed. And you talk about adding a bruiser ultimately to go with your finesse running back. Well, let me get a guy here because the Cincinnati Bengals, they have Joe Mixon. He can run, he can catch. Let me get a running back that's going to be there just to absolutely try to wear down the defense. A little bit of a reach, but I have absolutely no issues taking this kid. And personally,
if he says what I think he's going to say,
you're going to lose your mind.
I'm quitting.
I don't know why. I've always kind of had... I'm going to go with Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M to help out the running back situation there. I don't know if you thought I was going to go after anyone else. There's no other Texas A&M running back on the board there, right?
Well, we didn't hear you say Texas A&M. You cut out again. Xfinity made it really, really a toss-up between Isaiah Spiller and my guy, who I'm not going to tell you until I get to draft.
Fair enough. Oh, now I'm going to look at the running back board and just see if I can pick that running back, take him away from you ultimately.
Okay. Yeah.
But before I get to do that, number 96 overall, the Denver Broncos. Very limited picks, like a couple of these teams. You got to hit here. If you're the Broncos, who are they getting here in 96? We're reaching the very end here. I think we're at the last 10 picks, I think.
Well, Rick, you're going to be disappointed because I'm also going running back
Okay.
for the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
I think that they really, really like to go with a 2 running back system, and they're going to lose Melvin Gordon this year. I think they're going to go with a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He had a bunch of catches last year. He had 112 yards in one game and a touchdown.
Say his name, Justin.
I think they go with the younger brother, James Cook, out of Georgia.
That's not who I was thinking of, but whatever. It's fine.
Who'd you think I was going with?
Not telling you yet.
That's fine because it was between those two guys. I think James Cook is the change of pace back there. It really compliment Javonte Williams, who was just a punishing running back last year, and it's not necessarily a need for the Broncos, but it certainly brings them that depth and versatility that they're going to need if they want Russell Wilson to be on his feet the whole year.
Agreed. I think here, if you are the Detroit Lions, I think this is another team that we've just hit on the needs for them to the point where they could really go anywhere. I almost want to pick running back just to see if I could take Rick Sky with one last selection, but I'm not going to do that here.
Go for it. What the heck? Come on.
So I'm going to run with linebacker here. I think they need a guy that could just add to this team in any way, shape, or form. I think we've hit on the defensive line, we've hit on the defensive back crew. Let's hit at the linebacker core. Who are we going to pick here? Very interesting. I think some really good names here, actually, now I kind of look over the list. I think Detroit would be happy with any of these guys. Just barely, just barely. I'm going to side a little bit here with Brendan Smith over Darian Beavers from Cincinnati. I just think Brendan Smith is going to fit something that Man Campbell could like to do. I also think he could help with the pass rush just a little bit. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau, there's going to be plenty of pass rush, but I think have a guy help in terms of creating pressure, but more so dropping back if need be. I think Brendan Smith is going to be the guy at Penn State for the Detroit Lions. New Orleans is the next selection. They had the 2 first. Did they have any picks in the second round? I think it was just those 2 first, if I'm not mistaken, right?
They did. They took Desmond Ridder.
Right.
Well, yeah.
They did have a second. Okay.
Yeah,
I did take Desmond Ridder.
Yes, you did.
I kind of forgot because I forgot like how much really went into that trade of theirs. That's why I ask.
Go running back, Justin. Go running back. See what happens.
No, I am.
Alvin Kamara is going to be
another team. Alvin Kamara is going to be out. I think Mark Ingram is getting old, and I really want to piss Rick off, so I'm going to go running back. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. I thought about it. It is a need that I think that they have, but I don't necessarily know that they go in that that position this early in the draft. They have a lot of other needs that I think they're going to address first. I'm going to go pass rush. I think that they could use someone next to Cam Jordan, and I'm going to go with the edge rusher out of UAB, Alex Wright.
Good pick.
That's a good one. That's a really good pick.
Strong pass rushing grade last year from Pro Football Focus. I think he's a plug and play guy for them that is rare to get in the 3rd round. Alex Wright is my pick for the New Orleans Saints.
Nice.
All right.
Oh, Rick, you're still here.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Hey, you're finishing out strong. You have 4 of the last 6 picks.
I do, don't I?
Let's get to it.
Okay. Now, these picks are all compensatory. So basically, the deal is that just a little background under the resolution JC-2A. Teams are rewarded for developing minority candidates for head coach or general manager positions. So Cleveland got this pick because Minnesota hired their VP of football operations, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, as their GM. So a little bit of background for you on these picks. So these picks are basically like, the house picks. The house is going to win because you didn't have the picks before. You got them now. So you can take pretty much whoever you want at this point. I look at Cleveland. I look at, their roster, and I think to myself, they need a little more electricity when it comes to their offense. They need a little bit more of like an electric player. So this is my running back, who none of y'all took, thankfully. He is a home run hitter, this guy, and I ran a 4.37 40. Give me Pierre Strong Jr. out of South Dakota State. Give me the Jack
I had
Rabbit.
a feeling that's who his guy was.
Yeah. Absolutely. Give me the Jackrabbit because, it's a case where, you need to have somebody who can really be a deep threat and also a guy who can light it up on returns. Pierre Strong has got a really good opportunity to be that type of guy. So I think it's a really, really unique opportunity for him.
Good pick.
So,
that's a really
thank
good
you.
pick.
Thank you. I know. I picked it myself with these hands right here. Baltimore. So again, this is kind of where, like we said, these are the picks that are basically just like freebies. This was because of David Culley getting hired that the Texans gave this pick to Baltimore. While I'm tempted to go with Bailey Zappi here because again, I don't like the Ravens quarterback depth chart at all. No, but for good reason. Like right. It's Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley. Like it's not a good quarterback depth chart at all. I think the Ravens here will look for a need and they'll look more for a secondary pick.
Okay.
And I think for me, what they're also going to look for is somebody who's really going to change the game when it comes to all of the game. So I have them going with, out of Sam Houston State, Zion McCollum here at 100. Now, look, McCollum is a guy who has given up a lot of yards at the corner position, but you're not going to find a much better athlete on the field than Zion McCollum. So I think it's a good pick for them. And again, there's really no harm done there because it's pick 100. Whatever at this point, it's whoever you see fit. And then the Eagles. This is where the Eagles. This is where the Eagles are gonna take the other corner that I was looking at for the Ravens, and this is another guy who's gonna be a Darren Sproles type build, a shorter guy who's electric, who's got a lot of speed. Marcus Jones out of Houston is gonna go to the Eagles here. He's maybe the best returner in the draft. And that's something that I think the Eagles would love to have more explosiveness in their special teams game. So Marcus Jones here would be an excellent selection for them at 101.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. Miami Dolphins here. It says that their needs are wide receivers. Do they still need wide receiver? Really? I think the wide receiver position is set in Miami. So I'm going to move on from that. I'm going to look and see. What do we have here with the offensive line position? Some good pieces there, but I don't know if it's necessarily strong enough. I think to an underrated extent, I think the Dolphins could look at the defensive side of things just to add. That defense is what made them very good last season, and I think they need to just add a player that could really help make a couple of plays. And so that's why I'm going to go with neither of the selected positions that are on the board. I'm going to go with a linebacker instead. I'm going to go with a guy he was underrated on the defense that ended up winning last year, but I think he could really help make some plays on this team defensively. I'm going to go with Channing Tindall out of the University of Georgia. His name's never going to come up because of all the guys that we've said from Georgia. How many Georgia defensive players have we said in this draft, for the love of God?
Yeah.
But he I think is a very underrated piece. I think, the new defense, I think Brian Flores was still there. I think you'd have a lot of fun with him, but I still think, he could be a weapon on that defense, move him around a little bit. Predominantly as a linebacker, of course, that's what I mean when I say move him around a little bit. But I think he's going to very much be a help to that team. We keep asking questions about the offense. How's that defense going to perform with Brian Flores not there anymore? He was a very great defensive coach. I think that's the biggest question for me going into the season for them. Last 3 picks, guys, we've made it. And honestly, under 3 hours. I'm impressed. Let's keep it that way. Kansas City Chiefs, 103. Justin, this is your final selection. Take it away.
Yes, sir. And I was a little torn with this selection. I thought maybe about going after Alex Pierce, big receiver out of Cincinnati. I think they would, again, give the Chiefs a lot of depth at the receiver position, a lot of room to move around. They wouldn't necessarily need to pay anyone anymore. It'd be a cheaper guy. But out of curiosity, does anyone know where the Chiefs ranked in pass rush last year?
612th.
Pretty bad.
They were the 4th worst team. They had the 4th least amount of sacks with 31. And that's why I'm going to go with the edge rusher out of Kentucky, D'Angelo Malone. He's a one-trick guy. All he does is rush the passer. But he's had 180 pressures in his career at Kentucky. He's big, he's physical, and he's going to bring a lot of energy to that Kansas City front. I think they go D'Angelo Malone.
D'Angelo Williams would also help this team.
Considerably.
I think that they call D'Angelo Williams and ask him about D'Angelo Malone. And they take D'Angelo.
He says, "Who's that?"
Rick, we talk about compensatory picks. This team wouldn't have a selection in the first 3 rounds if it wasn't for this pick. This is the first time we are picking for the Super Bowl champions. Rick, being a champion in his own right, gets to make this selection. Rick, who are we going with the LA Rams?
So this is really, for being a compensatory pick, this is actually a really interesting selection here because of who's left on our board. And I think that if either one of these guys were left for the Rams, they would be super happy. Dominique Robinson there from Miami of Ohio was a wide receiver who's a 6'5" DN now, who's an absolute muscle buster. But I think the thing that LA is going to want to do is try and find a replacement for Andrew Whitworth. And so if you're telling me that Kellen Diesch from Arizona State is still on the board at 104, I'm taking him in a heartbeat. 6'7", can play tackle and guard. He's a phenomenal two position player there and fits a great need for them. So he's absolutely the guy the Rams take at 104 if he's still there. No question in my mind.
Not bad at all. And the final pick, our personal Mr. Irrelevant, because we're not going 7 rounds here. Because
could you imagine if we were in 7 rounds?
No, that'd be too much. That'd be way too much.
We'd be here all day.
Yeah, seriously. It'd be a nightmare.
Especially with my Wi-Fi connection.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
Yes. I'm going to make this very quick here.
Go with a punter. Come on. Go with a punter. Go with a kicker or a punter.
Trust me. I want to. But I'm going to go wide receiver here. I'm going to go with a guy who finished his collegiate career, 20 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons, back-to-back 1,000-yard receivings. Give me Romeo Doubs out of Nevada, 6'2", to me, a very good receiver overall. I think the San Francisco 49ers need to add receiver because even if they end up keeping Deebo Samuel, to me, at the end of the day, I think the most important thing for that organization is adding weapons because whether it's Jimmy G or whether it is Trey Lance next season, that is the most important thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we had a random ad pop up for a very brief moment, these are our selections for this draft. I will be downloading this image personally, and I will be posting up the image, and it is only saying the first 32 picks, so that is absolutely lovely.
Well, the full results will give you the full thing. But they'll be like 10 images.
Very, very, very true. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
But hey, fellas, if you ask me, I think we did a bang up job with this draft. As we see here, our full results. We're not gonna, go over every single pick because again, we don't really have the time. But that was our Sports Agents of Chaos 2022 3-round NFL mock draft. Wi-Fi issues included. Gotta say, fellas, it was a pretty successful day, all things considered, for the most part. I had a ton of fun.
Me too, Jurgen. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all made picks that riled up the others, but at the same time, we all made picks based upon what we thought, and I think that helped too. It wasn't just us picking picking punters for the teams we hated and everyone else for the teams we loved. So I think it worked out really nicely. So
I think next year, I think we need to do a mock draft where we're just making like funny picks in regards to the teams. I think that should be an idea that we personally go after.
Yeah. Apparently, somehow I got a D- on one of my punter picks in the 6th round, and all the other picks were Fs. I didn't really understand that, but
how dare they? They have no idea what they're talking about.
Right,
but ultimately, guys, that is going to bring an end to our mock. Obviously, we didn't just do one round. When we talked about this, the guys didn't just want to do one round, and I agreed because I think there's so much talent to look at in this draft. And I think we did a pretty good job. I think, like I said before, when we had teams with multiple picks, I think we hit at positions. I think we all made a couple of overdrafts, but I think in real life, there's going to be guys who get drafted higher than expected. And I think that's we all had logic and reasoning behind it. I think we did a pretty good job, once again, if you ask me. And I'm so thankful that you...
Except for you taking Chad Muma in front of me, jerk. And Sky Moore, you jerk.
There was one more player in there, I think.
Sure, yes. Someone third man. Yeah, sure. Great.
Just one.
Yeah.
Lovely. But guys, thank you so much for joining us for this. If you listen to all this, you're a trooper. That's all I could say, because this is almost 3 hours, so I'm not going to prolong it anymore. Thank you so much for joining us. Sports Agents of Chaos will definitively be back, where we will be reviewing what happened in the NFL draft to come. What did we think? What we thought would happen versus what actually happens? We will wait and see next week.
And remember, if I'm not here next week, you know why. So,
thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time.